I am, sorry.
All right, no problem. All right, welcome everybody to this work session for the South Kingstown Town Council. This is our first operating budget work session. It is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021 at 6:30. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. If Susan, you wouldn't mind leading us, that would be great.
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we've got a nice agenda in front of us tonight. Item 2 is discussion regarding budget process and town council goals and objectives. At this point, I'll let you take the reins, Rob.
All right. So we do have also all of the discussions with the department heads tonight. So I'm happy to have this conversation with the town council tonight. I'm starting to think that there may be a need for another session to be put on the calendar next week to talk specifically about goals and objectives and to sort of talk about the high level items in the budget. So if the council wants to continue here and talk goals and objectives, we can do that. If you want to put something on the calendar for before Monday night session, we can do that. Or we could do something perhaps Tuesday or Thursday of next week to talk goals and objectives and just sort of high level budget stuff.
Well, I do like the idea of not keeping our department heads out too late at night.
Well, they're all home in this case, but
sure. So yeah, I don't know. What does everybody else think of that? Tuesday would not work for me.
On Thursday, there's a building committee meeting.
Thursday would not work for me, unfortunately. And Tuesday doesn't work for me.
How about starting the Monday meeting earlier?
We can do that.
How would that work for folks? Better?
We have.
Would you be thinking of starting?
Susan, you're gonna share thoughts on that?
I was just going to say that we do have a couple of interviews scheduled for 7 o'clock. Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
So we can do it certainly at 6 or 6:30, or I can schedule the interviews earlier if you'd rather continue the actual work session discussion closer to the start of the regular meeting.
And Susan, those are zoning board interviews?
There's one for the zoning board and EDC and reappointment to the canvassing authority. So you can leave them at 7 and just do your special work session ahead of time, like we did the last meeting that we had that. That works.
Yeah, what last time we started at 6 and went until like 7, we might have run a little bit over, but maybe we don't need a full, maybe another full hour will be good enough.
I think that's about right. I think 45 minutes to an hour is about right.
That sound good for everybody?
And Rob, that would be goals and objectives and a high level overview of the budget?
So if we're gonna do both of those together, then we're gonna need the hour for sure.
Okay. I'd prefer to do both in that hour.
Okay.
Are we interviewing the people?
You don't have public hearings that night, if that helps any as far as going into your regular session.
Yeah, so we might not need a real long work session to go over the agenda. So that, yeah, I think we can make 6 o'clock work.
So we're going to start at 6 on Monday? Okay.
Okay.
Could get us out before 11.
I hope so. All right. Well, with that then, yeah, would you want to just go leap straight into department
Oh, yes, what I would suggest we do is we pull up the budget document and we'll go right through from tab 5 through to the end. I am going to ask, and I hate to do this to two department heads who are scattered throughout the budget, but I am going to just ask that folks stay on the line for the entire presentation, because I don't want to be jumping back and forth through sections. It just doesn't work well on Zoom for us to try to do that. So unfortunately, Terry is going to have to come back to us a couple of different times, and Rich Bourbonnais, the town engineer who's sitting in for John tonight, will have to do the same. It won't be terrible, but it won't be one sitting for each of those department heads, which is unfortunate. But again, just working through the document, trying to keep it in order is going to be easier if we just go straight through instead of jumping around trying to match all the departments.
All right. Well, I will let you call in the department heads as we go along then.
Okay, so I'm going to share screen, and we'll start with tab 5, which is the manager's office. And there's not a lot for us to talk about in this other than you'll note that the organization chart for the town manager's office has these two branches off it. It's the town government departments. And historically, the manager's office has had a personnel division within the management office. Part of our proposal this year is to move the personnel division out of the manager's office and make it its own department. The idea is that the work here has sort of grown up over the years. The department has really taken on a much more professional tone and character than it has had in the past. And it really is time for this function to stand on its own, not to be under the daily supervision of the manager, but rather to be reporting to the manager as a department does. This will entail taking an additional half person into that operation. The town council last year approved a position. We would make that part-time position a full position, bringing that office, that department now, up to 2.5. Is that right? No, it would be 3 people at the end of that change. And what that would do is would give us the ability to set up somebody who focuses on contracts and grievances, somebody who focuses on benefits, and have the capacity to begin to really start looking at professional development and training throughout the department, track certification, and the sorts of things that we just really haven't had the personnel or the organizational structure to do well. So that's really the only change that's being proposed in the manager's office. The FTE are there, and the numbers are there. If anybody has any particular inquiries about the salaries, benefits, or any of that, I'm happy to answer those. I will note that the changes in salary are simply those that are routine and regular. I have not put in for a pay raise for myself. I leave that to the council's discretion at a future date, but everyone else typically does track the increases that go with the union contracts. So those have been built in. Next on the agenda is Susan, the town clerk's office.
Hold on one second. We
Sure
have
thing,
a
I'm sorry.
question from Councilman Bergner.
Yeah,
Sure.
just a question, a process question. Are we asking questions along the way, or are we asking questions at the end?
No, I'm fine with on the way. It makes more sense because we're going to have the department heads in there. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just
Okay.
roll by too quickly.
So can you just go back to the, you had just shown the town manager. So I didn't see in the budget documents that you created a line item for that office. I don't know. I think I'm on I think I printed page 85, which is the program summary detail by area of service. And so it's not called out. If a new department were created,
It would be here. What we're calling the personnel division would simply be retitled the Department of Human Resources and Training is what I'm proposing as the change. But it would be here. This is the same exact presentation that you would have if that name were adopted.
So, well, I think division and department, I'm confused on the
Yeah.
organizational.
There's not much of a distinction other than historically divisions in South Kingstown report to a supervisor, report to someone who reports to the manager. The town manager is the direct supervisor for all department heads. The town manager is not the direct supervisor for division heads historically. Division heads report to department heads report to the manager. Now, in the manager's office and the personnel division of the manager's office, that's a little bit, different because the manager is the department head as well as the town manager. So what we would be doing is taking that division out, and I anticipate that the Director of Administrative Services, who is a direct report to the manager, would continue to be a direct report to the manager, but would have a different title, Director of Human Resources and Training.
So are you eliminating the director of administrative services?
Yes. What we've found in recent years is that the role has migrated toward or has sort of become more personnel focused than anything else. And the additional duties are duties that are distracting from the personnel function in ways that are deleterious to the personnel function. So I'd like to get the non-personnel items off of the plate and redistribute them around the department. So one of the departments. So one of the things that we will talk about when we come to finance is putting together an RFP to go out and buy ourselves a new budget software package. Because the way that this budget was put together, the way budgets have been put together in South Kingstown historically is really using Word and Excel and trying to keep things linked together rather than having a budget software that focuses on budget. We've got a word processing application and a spreadsheet application, which ends up being multiple, very multiple spreadsheets from various departments that need to be reconciled with one another and then need to be reconciled with our munis, our general personnel and general expenditures tracking software. There are software packages that aren't, Microsoft products that are sort of generic, but there are products out there that specifically tie to munis and specifically allow for a simple data entry at one point without having to go through and change all sorts of spreadsheets. So one of the functions that the administrative services director has historically performed is she has worked to make sure that the Excel documents and the Word documents, when putting the budget together, are all snapped together neatly. It's a huge task. It's a really monumental task. It ends up being more work for the Director of Administrative Services and the Finance Director than it is warranted, given the fact that modern software will do this for us. So we're contemplating that move out of everybody's bailiwick in part, because if we've got a software package that allows the department heads to type into a dialog box, we don't have to reconcile things the same way. There will be work even with software that pastes this stuff together, but it's not going to be anywhere near the amount of work. Another function that has sort of grown up and has eaten up time and taken time away from the personnel function is the APRA, Access to Public Meetings software, the APRA, the Access to Public Meetings law and response to requests for information. Again, here, I think that software helps solve part of our problem, and I do think that there are some administrative changes in how we respond to those requests that would make that process go smoother. So again, the idea is to figure out how to get the personnel function isolated from these other, I'll call them for want of a better phrase right now, distractions, so that we can really pay attention to the town's employees, pay attention to the benefits, pay attention to the retention, pay attention to the recruitment, pay attention to the training and the development of our personnel. It's not just another function another duty is assigned anymore. It's really a function that needs to be performed with great focus and not be subject to the sorts of distractions that have grown up in the admin services area. So there's probably some changes in the way that other sort of, I'll call them, for want of a better phrase, orphan activities are performed. Right now, the Director of Administrative Services serves as a de facto department head for the facilities division. The facilities division really belongs in the Public Works division, or the Public Services department, I should say. And we'd see that shift happen here. We've been talking about doing that for a couple of years. It is a logical place for the facilities division to be reporting to. We need to make that a more complete delegation, rather than having the facilities supervisor reporting to the Director of Administrative Services. He needs to be reporting to either the town engineer or the town director of Public Works. The same is sort of true with regard to the fire alarm division. Again, I would suggest one of the small departments or divisions that really is orphaned, and we need to make sure that Lance is reporting directly to me if he's serving as a department head. And if for any reason we decide that the department needs to be part of another department, we need to identify that department and not have it reporting to the former position of administrative services. So it is a change in work, but the purpose for the change in work is to focus on the thing that matters the most, which is making sure that our personnel program is operating well.
And this is just a really simple question maybe. So the Director of Administrative Services is I guess aware of these change. I mean, it seems like a huge shift in responsibilities, and I see the internships and internships that's the department heads or whatever is on board.
So a couple of things. One, if we were to take this focus even without changing the report, we would make this focus change. We would shift things that need to be done. I mean, the hierarchy in a bureaucracy is a hierarchy for a reason. We do have, a process of accountability. I have talked to Amy about these changes. I think that Amy would agree with regard to the need to sort of gain focus around personnel. I think she fully appreciates the idea of making sure that there's a clearer focus for this division. I do think that there's probably a lot to be worked through that's going to have to be sort of dealt with as we stand up. For example, training programs. We've not done that in the past. In fact, one of the things that I've been frustrated by is I've been trying to figure out how to get us to do an annual engagement survey, just finding out what folks in town hall are feeling about, the operation. What is it that they'd like, to see in terms of changes in the workplace? We don't do an annual survey of employee opinion. We don't ask people how we can improve their workplace, not in a formal way. Doing that is more work. Doing that is going to take some time. It's going to take some shift in focus. It's going to require us to do things that we haven't done in the past. But I don't know that that's something I need to negotiate, other than to make sure that we're getting to a place where it can be done.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
APRA. So that's the other question. So the APRA part. Who will handle that function for the town?
So it's not clear to me at this point whether we need to be shifting toward another department, or whether this is a function that in the transition period, in the first year, is something that would be continued by the Department of Personnel or Human Resources and Training. It may be that while we're standing this up, we're going to have to keep some of the old structure going for a bit. We're not going to be able to, I don't think it makes sense for us to backfill the Director of Administrative Services in the manager's office. I don't think that that's going to be necessary in the long haul. However, in the short run, it may be necessary to keep the glide path slower than I'd like on the human resources and the training stuff. We may not be able to do as much training in the first year because we're still doing some APRA. But eventually we need to shift that and get that to a new home, whether that's legal, whether that's another department here in town hall, whether that's a part-time person who works for the clerk's office at some point in the future. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to note that Amy has her hand raised in the attendees. So
Susan, can you bring her in?
Good evening, thank you. So I've just heard much of what Rob said for the first time. And I'm quite taken aback by hearing in a public meeting to the council that the position I currently hold will be eliminated. I do support an expansion and a focus on personnel needs for the town's municipal staff. But again, reading the town manager's message and seeing that it said, we recommend this change was curious to me in that I am not part of that we. I'm shocked right now and disappointed. If this was something that was going to be proposed, I would have hoped for the respect to have had this conversation with my boss. I will share that there was a conversation maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago, where Rob had spoken about some very, grandiose and future plans. I had asked if there were some changes that were going to be proposed for July 1st to either fully implement or to move towards this. And his answer was no, beyond the increase in the FTE from a part-time to a full-time. I made very clear that that increase was to meet current need, not necessarily to expand the scope. I had indicated that there were probably 3 to 4 additional FTE that were necessary in order to meet the needs of what he was proposing. But I need it on record with the council, with my colleagues, and with the public that what I heard the manager just say is very new to me and disappointing. Thank you.
So Amy, if you will, can you stay on for a minute? Amy?
I think she agreed to stay on, so.
Okay, thank you. So Amy, I'm sorry if this surprises you. We did in fact have a conversation more than once actually about the creation of a Department of Human Resources and Personnel. Did we not? Human Resources and Training, did we not?
No. Again, I think this conversation is probably better had not in public session, but since that is how it began, I needed to just go on record.
No, that's fair. And I have no problem with you going on record. What I am confused about is your answer to my question just now. I am confused by that. We'll have to resolve this.
Yes, I think it probably is good for you two to have that conversation, and then maybe we can have a report back at some point.
That's great. So at any rate, the answer to your question, Councilwoman Bergner, is just as I've represented. That is the intention. That is the intention that I thought I had conveyed to the current Director of Administrative Services. It's certainly the intent that went into the design of the financials in this budget, and we'll have to reconcile the Director of Administrative Services acknowledged need for focus on personnel with the total design that program needs to have. I will say that the director did point out that she would need more people for a full-blown department. And we did, in this conversation that I remember having, I did indicate that we couldn't do 3 or 4 people now and that a program would have to grow over time, but that we would start by creating a program this year. We have talked about that in public session with the town council. Training has been discussed with the town council. I'm at a loss to explain the disconnect of communication. We will resolve that and be back to the council with a full explanation of what it is that the department can do to improve the quality of services being provided to the town's employees and to the town in general. With that, if there are any other questions about the manager's office budget, I'm happy to talk to you about those. Yes.
So we can hold it for another time, but I just was wondering the detail. I printed out page 85. That's that I'm holding on to, and I don't see that new department or department is reflected in the detail. So will that be changed? Because I see.
Yes, again, the department would be where you see the division. The personnel division would simply be renamed.
Okay. I might come back to it. Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on Ed or?
Councilman McEntee has a question.
Yeah, Rob, I'd just like to pose the question. Have you been in communication with all employees that are subject to restructuring in their positions, whether that be a change in their department name or position name?
There are 2 that would be affected. The one would be, well, the division head, yes. So I do recall a conversation with the Director of Administrative Services. In fact, I recall more than one conversation on this point. Again, I can't explain the confusion. And the other recommended change is with the emergency medical services. And I've had multiple contacts with Craig Stanley about this as well.
Okay, another question. In the event that we'd like to reject any organizational structure changes that you would like to do, would that be part of a budget vote?
Yes.
On a preliminary on March 22nd? Even though
Yes.
it does not have to do with the actual budget numbers, it would be just in the budget document, I guess, or organizational structure?
So actually, I'm going to have to get back to you and find out the answer to that question, because generally speaking, the structure of the organization is an administrative function. The charter speaks specifically to the town council's ability to engage on that question, whether or not the town council's rejection of a administrative change would constitute unwarranted interference in the administration. I can't tell you right now. I'm going to have to get a legal opinion on that. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
But I'll tell you this. If the town council doesn't want us to create a division or a department, I'm not doing that. I mean, we're not gonna do something that the council believes is unhelpful. I will try to explain to you why I think these things are necessary and good. If the council says no, we don't have an appetite for that, I'm not going to create a change in the organization that you don't think is a good idea.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Berger, yeah. You have your hand up.
Just to follow up on what Councilman McEntee said, so could we just say, if the council decided not to make that position, that additional position, a full-time position, it went unfilled for a year. If we said, no, we don't want to fill that, would you still make the change? Would you still make the structural changes?
I might. And again, only if the council thought that that was, you know, a reasonable thing to do. I'm not going to do things with the town government that the council thinks are a bad thing to do. So eliminating that position definitely compromises the ability to begin moving toward a bona fide department. That's true. So if the council does not provide the additional half position, then it probably is not feasible to move to a department structure at this point. But even if the council makes that position available, that half-time position available, if the council expresses to me its grave concerns, or for that matter, it's silly, you know, whimsical concerns from the council are important to me. They don't need to be based on detailed analysis. If you're concerned for any reason, I will, you know, react to that. I'll respond to that. And if the council does not want to see a new department of personnel, we don't need to stand one up, I suppose. I do think that it is in the best interest of the community. Otherwise, I wouldn't propose it. But if the council thinks otherwise, that's fine.
All right, I do see that Zach has his hand up now.
Just quickly, I wanted to let Councilwoman Bergner know the reason, unfortunately, because of COVID, we didn't fill that half an FTE for Amy, and because we had to repurpose that to have the town hall people who do the check-in and the greeting and kind of move traffic around. So we use that vacant position to, you know, unfortunately, if otherwise Amy would have filled her half an FTE. So it wasn't lack of we didn't want to, it was more of there was an immediate need, and unfortunately that is where we went to.
Thank you, Zach. I do remember that. Thank you.
All right. Moving on. Susan?
Good evening, everybody. Town clerk's office is one of the larger divisions in the town government, having 6 major areas: town council records, land records, vital statistics, probate court, business licenses, and last but not least, the Board of Canvassers, which, as you all know, has been extremely time-consuming and very active this year. Our budget is not changing dramatically. There's minor salary adjustments in accordance with the contracts. We did do a 10-year republication of the town code this year, which had increased our professional services budget by about $6,000, and that is now done. So it's going back to its normal level. So there's only a 1.37% increase change in the town clerk's budget. The canvassing authority's budget is based on not having any major elections in the next fiscal year. And so you see a 31.59% decrease in that budget. Anyone has any questions? I will say that we were very fortunate this year to have received 2 separate grants. The first one that I had applied for this summer, and we received $15,000 to assist with the voting under COVID circumstances that were necessary to assist with mail ballot voting and emergency voting and making things safe for the poll workers and the voters. And And the second is a grant of $7,000 that the state actually has just provided to us to assist with the costs of the election that was held yesterday, which was a non-budgeted item. So that will be very helpful in defraying the expenses that we have encountered this year. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any. Thank you again for all the work you've done this year, Susan.
Yes.
See if we can take
If I pull
a.
us- Yes, if you see the bags under my eyes tonight, it's because it was about an 18-hour day yesterday.
How'd you make out- Susan, how'd you make out in voter turnout? I know we were leading the towns and cities as of.
In the morning we were. I don't know how the end of the day came out. I don't have those numbers. We did exceed the expected turnout at the polls yesterday at the rec center, which I will give another shout out to Terry Murphy and Craig Bryant and all the staff at the rec center for accommodating us once again. It is an absolutely beautiful facility to use. The residents in town are very happy to go to the rec center. It is also a good opportunity for many people to make their first trip to the rec center and really take a look around and see what a nice facility it is. But it is an absolutely ideal place to hold an election. We put more than 1,200 voters through there yesterday with a very smooth process.
Great. Yeah, I went and voted in person, and it was just moving really quickly. I was surprised by how many people were out there voting. It was good to see.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
All right, on to finance.
Thank you. So the finance department, very briefly, we cover the areas of financial management and administration, accounting and cash management, procurement and risk management, tax and utility collection. You know, we house a significant amount of information in our office, and too, we're responsible for, you know, budget preparation, comprehensive annual financial report, the year-end audit for the town. There are a number of moving parts that take place in finance. Our budget this year is relatively flat. We saw some personnel savings due to, if you look from our 2020 actual to what we're to 2022 and 21, we had savings in personnel due to we had a retirement. We deferred hiring a position due to COVID. We held off on that. We just recently filled that position, and because it's not a new position, we actually downgraded the position because the person who had retired was at a senior level. We moved it down to an account clerk level, increasing in our tax collection office, and we backfilled the new position, the new title of deputy finance director, with a slight upgrade from the finance manager position. That happened in July of 2021, and we were vacant in that position from right around November through the fiscal year. Now we're right-sized and staffed up. We're trying to play catch up and get through that. We got through our audits. We got through the budget document preparation and for this standard. If you look at most of our expenses, they remain relatively flat, except for the line item under the computer equipment line, which is the request for a budget development formulation package, software package that can be used for not only in-house preparation of the budget document, as the manager said, and I would like to personally thank all the department heads who put the time into it. This is my second budget season in town. Working with Amy, I know the long hours and the significant amount of lift it takes to put together this 400-page document that is, and I will say, we're one of very few cities and towns in Rhode Island that are recognized for our document prep by the GFOA. our comprehensive annual financial report. So we try to adhere to very high standards. And to do that takes a lot of work. People they see the end product, but they don't always understand or recognize the heavy lift that it takes. We think that moving to a software package, they've refined them over the number of years. There are a number out there. We'd like to see what's out there and not only increase the in-house preparation, but provide for a different experience at the end user. Different models have, it produces a traditional PDF book that has links, but it also has a web version that can do flyouts with graphs and drill down into detail of, particular line items. We think, in this community, people like information, they like data, and, we're trying to find a way to easily get that out to them. And we think this could be a significant, opportunity for us. It's hard to decide what, they range. You can get a standard package or you can go custom. We went with a placeholder or an estimate of 25,000. We would know better if we get approval. In this budget, we could put together an RFP, see who comes in, and try to find that good compromise of what can give us the most value for an appropriate price. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Zach. I don't see any questions. We can move on.
Great. So we're going to bring Lori Fox in.
Good evening, how are you? And thank you for this opportunity to present the IT budget. The IT department is comprised of 3 full-time staff members. Myself as the director, there's an IT manager and a network administrator. We work primarily in support of all the departments across the town, as well as working cooperatively with the school in maintaining the financial, payroll, and HR system. The majority of our budget maintains the hardware for the town, such as servers and network equipment and firewalls. Also software, such as the town's financial, payroll, and HR system, the tax assessment and collection systems, permitting and licensing that we have online, internet and phone services, as well as the town's website. The main increases that you see here primarily are some contractual in salaries. And the biggest increase would be in the services area, which covers hardware and software maintenance, as well as this year with our new phone system, we consolidated the departmental phone bills under the IT department. That was almost $11,000 that increased the IT budget. Overall, because we did decrease the departmental budget for phone bills, we actually saved between $5,000 and $6,000 overall across the town. But it did show an increase to the IT budget. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
So I will just note one small item that IT has been involved in that we've talked to the council about recently, and that is the smartphone application. That smartphone application is now available online. Anyone who goes to the Apple Store or the Google Store can download the South Kingstown smartphone app. We are waiting on some promotional materials, I guess, the best way to describe them, that describe where to get the application and how to download it and how to use it. But it's pretty intuitive, so anyone who wants to start using the smartphone app can do so now.
If you search either of the stores just for the keyword of South Kingstown, you'll find it.
Neat. I see Councilwoman Bergner has her hand up.
Sure. Thank you, Lori. I just wanted to ask you again, I know you explained it, but your proposed budget is up by whatever, 40,000. And the way I understood it is some of it's from the phone. You're taking the centralized cost. So the departments are less. Is that all that I heard? Or is there, because it's projected at 94, but they're proposing 133? Am I?
So the increase, as I mentioned, it's about $11,000 for the phones. So the departmental budgets would have been decreased by those dollars, and it was basically moved over to the IT budget for budgeting as well as payment processing, just making it a bit simpler. The other increases in my department would be for maintenance of hardware and software. So we maintain, as I said, the financial and payroll system. We do tax collection and assessment, as well as OpenGov that we use for permit and business licenses online. Those go up every year, varying. Sometimes they go up 5%, sometimes it's 3%, so they vary from year to year.
So look, in the services line, we're showing $16,000 over last year. $11,000 of those 16 are for the phone. Do you know off the top of your head what the other $5,000 is in service?
The other 5,000 would be in support of both of the Munis system, the Vision system, and the OpenGov system.
This is actually a major challenge for us because there's a lot of proprietary software that everybody uses, that we use, and the prices are beginning to creep up more aggressively in recent years. They know we're all addicted to it. We're all using their products, and it's hard to change.
I think I just want to explain what I see. So I'm looking at the 94,000 is what you're projected to spend. And then when you move one column to the right, it's 133. So I see it as, and the swing is actually 40, but when you look back one column to the left, it's 117. So
that's correct. And you'll see that throughout the budget. We always go budget to budget. The actuals in our budget end up being undesignated fund. They end up being ones that end up either in capital or undesignated fund at the end of the year. There's been a reduction in service costs this year from the 117. It looks like we're going to be coming in at about, what's that, 17 plus 6, 33, 17.6, $23,000 less than we were anticipating. Those monies roll into undesignated fund, or if they're shifted to capital accounts, that also sometimes happens. These will end up in undesignated fund. So the increase over prior year is always increase over the budgeted. The actuals, your actual experience always varies from your budget. Otherwise, if you don't do that, what you end up with is a system where everybody spends their budget just to get rid of the money, which is common in some organizations. They look like they're going to have a $24,000 or 20, whatever. They're going to have excess money, so they go out and they buy tons of pencils, or they buy equipment that they don't really need. We don't do that. What we do here is when we have those funds, they roll up to the undesignated funds, so they're available for budgetary purposes in the next year. And those funds that don't show up here, that are going to be saved from what was budgeted, do show up in our undesignated fund and will be used for the purpose of reducing the tax increase next year. They will be used for the purpose of offsetting other expenses.
Thank you. Sorry, Lori. I was looking. And I was, sorry.
No, it's a very
That's
reasonable
okay.
question. It's a good question. All right.
Councilman McEntee.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on this point. I'm going to direct my question to Zach Saul. Zach, if we are projecting that the cost in this services line, for example, is 94,000, why would we propose to spend 130,000 on it?
So the projected is your activity for the year and what you think may happen. And, Lori can speak to the specific line items in the projected column for what she feels is going to happen for the end of fiscal, this fiscal year in 21. There are a lot of uncertainties, I think, in spending. There were some delays, and Lori can probably speak to the specific line items where you can see there were professional services, was projected at 7,800, where it was, the adopted budget was 17,400. And she knows the details of the line item, so I would defer to her to get to the details. But then there's there's an explanation for that. I just don't know. And then
Right.
in the current year, when she did her proposal, there's all those services are probably at a need. The phone was a new design. We reduced, our system went to a different model, and we housed it all in one section under IT. So that's why you see that. But there was a reduction in the phone for most of the other departments. So if you look at the telephone line item in most of the departments, as you'll see coming up, most of their numbers in the proposed are going to go down, because it's now been shifted. But you don't go back and shift your adopted and we didn't really change the projected because it happened so late in the game. So it looks like it's a really odd, and that happened last year, if you recall, when we moved the facilities and we put everything under, we created kind of that facilities department, where before it used to be fragmented out across the departments. And then we put together the facilities department and moved all those personnel expenses and under one kind of, roof. It looks odd in the first year, but then going forward, it will stop. It will level out, and it's just you have to kind of go from that jumping point, and you'll see that really strange variance because you've taken all this cost in where you never had that before. Now it's just a new cost center. And keep in mind, the general fund itself is all one fund, even though it's made of multiple departments. But at the end of the day, it's still treated as one fund. So, if you have a deficit in one department and you have a surplus in another department in the general fund, you still look at the bottom line as where you would go. Internally, and for your purposes, we look at every department because we want to see, what's happening. Why would a particular department, potentially run a deficit, or if there's a huge swing in the line item. I'll let Lori answer, try to answer the details of the projected line versus, where she brought those numbers back up to for 22. If my long-winded answer got you there.
So in a sense, it's almost hedging against potential uncertain increases.
That's part of it. I mean, this was a really hard year to project because, at the end of fiscal 20 and early into fiscal 21, I mean, we really were we tried to hit the pause button on a lot of things, and we really scrutinized every expenditure that we were looking at because of all of the uncertainties surrounding COVID. So it really made it difficult to project and budget in this current year. We anticipate, I hope, in going into 22 and future budgets, that things start to return back to a level of normalcy. So in IT has a lot of normal fluctuations because we are tied to licenses for software that we use. If they raise it a particular percent, we can't go back and say, no, we don't want to, we can only this because this is what we budgeted. We use Microsoft products. We have Microsoft licenses. If they increase those licenses, we're at their mercy. Our Munis system, which does accounting, payroll, HR, is the kind of the line of business. It'd be very difficult for us to, shelve that system, then try to stand up a new one. I mean, the town made a commitment back in, I think, 2013 to use this system and to, and it kind of encompasses everything. So you don't shift those systems often. That's probably in every 10 to 15 year review. because of the heavy lift. And if I recommended it, I think every department head would probably ask for me to be taken out. So, I wouldn't want to do that to anybody. So I think I'll let Lori answer the particular line items.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Councilman, a couple of items that we have in services, we do put money aside for professional outside IT services. We try and use those very sparingly. So we try and do a lot of figuring out ourselves so that we do not have to pay consultants on the outside to bring them in for certain expertise. We try and figure out a lot of those things on our own. But if we do have something that goes beyond our skill set, we will, work with an outside vendor. Most outside vendors on average in the IT sector are getting about $175 to $200 an hour. So I do put money aside for that. Also in the budget, I put about $5,000 in professional services for any fiber issues that we have. We have a fiber ring that runs across all of our town buildings to communicate between services and getting people access to the internet and getting them access to various software systems. If that were to go down, which knock on wood, we've only had happen one time during the windstorm, on average, that runs anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000. So I do budget that as a precautionary, and I'm going to play the odds that I'm not going to have to use it. So right there between those two items is almost $10,000 as well.
So Lori, just quickly, the projected 94 off the 117, where are those savings coming from? How is it that we're off by, what is it, $23,000? How did we get to 94?
So I have about $10,000 to $12,000 between the fiber maintenance and the networking outside services that we're not using right there. There are also various supplies that I haven't needed to purchase. With people working from home, we've had very little replacement of UPS backup devices, keyboards, mice, and so on. So we budget for all that across the town. And I haven't had to utilize those. Also, OpenGov came in a little bit less than what was projected. I also had budgeted almost $4,000 for telephone support. And because we went with a new phone system, I didn't have to pay that. That was all bundled in for the first year of maintenance. That was part of the capital cost.
And we expect to go to 133 because?
Again, I'm projecting that we may have to, I put money in there for fiber equipment. I put money in there for outside services in case we need to use a specialized IT skill set that we don't have in-house. It's also based on increases. OpenGov has gone up, Munis has gone up, our firewall support has gone up, and our telephone support has gone up. And that's all under the IT budget. Departments used to pay for that separately themselves. So the maintenance of the phone system has come under IT across the town as well.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you, Lori, for that presentation and for, tightening the belt. I think one thing we'll notice as we go through tonight's presentation is this is going to be popping up in a lot of departments. I think I just looked at the number, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but our projected expenditures are over $1 million less than our, accepted budget last year. So we'll see this as a pattern. A lot of the departments have, as Zach put it on pause or not filled positions to try and save money through the, pandemic. Maybe if department heads are listening in, they can prepare for those questions. If there were big differences between the projected and the adopted budget, they can tell us, where those savings were found. So Councilwoman Bergner and Councilman Mackin, you still have your hand up too.
So I just was curious. I know that I'm excited. I haven't put the app on my phone yet, but what was the cost of the app? I thought I heard it was an incentive for us to try it. And so they had a low price. So did we account for that? And are we going to assess, can we figure out how many people have downloaded it? And is it really a good value? A lot of people are excited about apps. I have lots of apps that I never even open. So
Right.
I just didn't know what it cost.
Yeah, Lori, we just had the discussion about the PO yesterday or today, right? Do you remember offhand?
Yeah, so the app was, it was about $4,990. Initially, it came in, I think, at 10,000. And we actually had looked at our website. We use Civic Plus as a vendor for that. They have an app and they were coming in at about 17. So as an incentive, the vendor went down to the $4,990, which we were waiting until we were live in the App Store. We have not paid that yet, but so we did put money in varying departments' budgets. The folks who are primarily, I'm going to say, highlighted in the app. When you look at the app, you'll see that the police department, the Parks and Rec, the town clerk's office, the building office, those folks are highlighted primarily on the main page of the app. So the cost of the ongoing cost into next fiscal year was included in varying departments' budgets. And we will be able to get analytics as to how many downloads and things like that. So we can certainly report that back to the council.
And the other thing is my own issue about the website. I use it a lot, and there are some things that I think are sort of wonky about it. Do you think it's in your plan to do some redesign?
So yes, as part of the proposal that we did about 4 years ago when we deployed a new website was that we would do a redesign. So we are actually up for a redesign, and it happened to coincide with the beginning of the pandemic, where IT was pretty much working around the clock to get everybody out of the building and working from home. So I did put that on pause, and now it's something that we definitely need to look at. There's a lot of different functionality, and I think we need to kind of look at the website from the eyes of the constituents, as opposed to, we know that permits fall under this department or that department. The public may not know that. They may not know where do you go for information on a wastewater system, or they want to be a right-of-way contractor. They may not know some of that. And I think sometimes it's difficult to find that on the website because we tend to think kind of in our own silos. We all think about what we do as departments, and we're very much, happy to talk about what we do for departments. But I think the public at large doesn't necessarily know where to find some of these things. So my hope is when we redesign, we make the search functionality easier for folks to find things, and we streamline where the information is. Right now, it's in several places, and I think we need to kind of streamline that, looking at it with some fresh eyes and the eyes of the public.
I thank you so much, because I do think we need to ask the public, maybe even some of the boards and commission members, how they use the website, how they navigate, just because from the user end, I'm sure we get to the same place, but we travel a different road. Like to get to the agenda, I go one way and my friend goes another way. So I think the users who use it, and maybe even also asking the boards and commissions, because it's challenging. I understand, but maybe we could just make it a little more user friendly, because it's one of my interest areas.
I agree. I agree with you 100%.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you, Lori.
Next up is Jean Bouchard, the Tax Assessor's Office.
Okay, I'm Gene Bouchard, the town assessor. I believe every one of my line items in the budget is a flat compared to the previous year. The majority of my budget is to support the personnel and benefits of the 4 people who work in the office. Myself as the assessor, I have an administrative assistant, I have a data assessment clerk who does field work and permit work, and then we have an office clerk, 1 position that remains in the office. Those 4 people are all involved with our annual chores of discovering and listing and valuing all taxable property, real estate, motor vehicles, tangible and tangible business property. And that's in an effort to prepare the annual tax roll and certifying the tax roll by June 15th of every year. We also, every 3 years, have to coordinate a revaluation, this year being a full revaluation, where every property is reviewed and verified. The exterior measurements of the structures are verified. In addition to those duties, we have to administer state and local exemptions that we provide to the community. We maintain property record cards for ownership. Every time a property transfers or has a new name of ownership, we have to put those into our records. We have to prepare hearings as we're to coordinate the assessment board of review activities. We process surveys and subdivisions that are submitted. We coordinate that with the GIS department so that we have proper land evidence records. I mentioned that we provide a number of reports to the state annually. And the big thing is we disseminate information to the public and respond to public concerns and questions on a daily basis, either through emails, phone calls, or when the building is open, walk-ins. But that's pretty much about it. I believe every one of my line items is flat level funded, and the majority of the budget is to support those 4 people to accomplish those activities. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to address them.
I see none, so thank you for coming tonight, Gene.
Okay, thank you.
And next up is Jamie Rabbit and the Planning Department.
Rob, can you hear? There we go.
We all can hear you, yes?
Good evening, everyone. Just with regards to the budget, we overall between salaries, as you've heard before, the majority of our salary increases are associated with contractual obligations and step raises as warranted with the positions being held for the 5 staff members within the department. The other asks are within the non-salaried items, which you may see a few jumps in the numbers, which potentially exceed the 100% level. But I would like to say that historically, those items have been strategically underfunded, primarily as they relate to consulting services, education, and professional development or dues. Those are the primary bigger ticket items with regards to increases. And I don't know if any board council members have any specific questions regarding those changes or those specific asks.
Councilman McEntee.
Jamie, I see you got the comprehensive plan complete or near complete. Well done there. I got one question in front of us here. How'd you get benefits down?
I think benefit wise is the structure associated with those taking the payout for insurance. So there's a payout associated with that, but the reverse is you're not funding that insurance at a higher level. So there is potential reduction. I think Zach may be better posed to answer that in full detail. But again, from our perspective, that was one of the reasons it went down that I'm aware of.
Yes, less people taking the town subsidized healthcare plan and taking the insurance buyback, which is substantially less. Family plans are close to 20,000, I believe, and single plans are close to 7,000 for total cost. So it doesn't take much to drive those. If one family plan comes off and someone comes on and doesn't, it was a very similar situation in the finance department. New employee came on. When you budget, you always budget with, your planning values are always to use the family plan as part of the overall cost of the employee. If the new employee comes on and elects not to take that, you recognize a savings. That is basically what happened in this case.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Rory, I would love to say it was something magical I did as the new director, but Zach and I think summed it up on what the realities are there. But again, I think it's a great effort by the town manager and the council to offer that, because it is a substantial state savings offered to both the employee as well as the town and ultimately the taxpayer.
Councilwoman Bergner.
So I don't think this goes right with planning, but this makes me think of it. And so I'm just saying it so that we can come back to it, or tell me when we would get to it, is the boards and commissions who get a small stipend. When was the last time we looked at those stipends for our board members? Because I mean, having just been at some marathon planning board meetings, extra planning board, special times with Jamie Rabbit, all these crazy things happen. So I just was wondering if when we would, I know it's budgeted, but when we would talk about looking at that. Also, we're having, we're short on the zoning board. I know they don't make a lot of money, but I don't know what's budgeted. I saw it as a line item, but who handles that?
So we have it in the budget. It can be adjusted by the town council, subject to any statutory limitations. And I'm not prepared tonight to tell you whether there are any limitations, whether the statutes dictate the rate of compensation. We've got three. The planning board, the zoning board, the board of assessment review are the three that have a stipend associated with those boards. And I can check in and make sure that we're not.
The canvassing board too, Rob, has a stipend.
Canvassing. Okay.
Yeah.
And
So-
Councilwoman Bergner, you are correct. We leveled those stipends have remained flat for a number of years. And if it's something you want to take up, we're happy to work with you. And if you want to make a proposal.
Because I don't know what they get, and that, if it's $10, it's nothing, and $15 is still almost nothing for their hours of time. I just didn't know what it was and at what juncture we would tackle that, just even to talk about it.
Yep. So Jamie, do you know offhand what the stipend is for?
I want to say it's plus or minus $50 for a meeting. Rob, it's in that range.
Yeah.
It, again, based on looking at some budget history when I was preparing of my budget changes, I think it's 4 to 5 years where that has remained flat. I know, to Rob's point, there is some statutory guidelines and perhaps limitations on the maximum amount you can offer.
So we need to report that back to the council so they know what the operating environment is.
I do have a board, Deb, to your point, I do have a board member who mentioned that one night in order to attend a meeting, they had to hire a babysitter and actually, in essence, lost money that night because the cost of the babysitter far exceeded the stipend. And that could weigh to people being able to serve and stay on those boards.
So we'll give the council a report on stipends, whether there are any limitations imposed by state law, and if not, what the history of each board and commission has been.
Again, probably new, Abel, is if you look at the write-up, and it initially when it was done, GIS was separate, but we're trying to focus in essence on 8 core areas, 7 being revolving around planning and the 8th being geographic information systems, to really try and, again, focus staff as well as focus the boards and commissions in town on what the goals and objectives of the community as well as the town council are.
Councilwoman Bergner, your hand is up. So all right. Any other questions for Jamie? All right. Thank you, Jamie.
And
Thank you.
We're going to call our other Jamie back, Jamie Gorman.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jamie Gorman, the building official. The main duties for the department include interpretation and enforcement of the zoning ordinance, as well as the adopted Rhode Island State Building Codes. Our department staff consists of 1 administrative support associate, 2 full-time inspectors, and 2 part-time inspectors. I will note that we are currently seeking to fill the vacant building inspector position, which we hope to do soon. The majority of the time the inspectors spend is during the day is reviewing permit applications for compliance with respect to zoning and building code, as well as performing on-site inspections That's a majority. And I just want to note that this past year, even despite the pandemic, it's been very busy for construction within the town. And we anticipate that the following year be just as busy, if not busier.
Any questions for Jamie? All right, that's pretty cut and dry. Thank you for coming tonight, Jamie.
Thank you.
So we're going to bring in the facilities division, which is Mark Russo. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. So the facilities division, we have 10 employees, 10 full-time employees. And the duties are not limited to, but include the custodial services for all of the 16 buildings that we serve, routine preventive maintenance, long-term proactive maintenance, safety code compliance, and contract administration for building services such as electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and any capital improvements that we do. We monitor those and make recommendations if it's not meeting expectations. Our budget is pretty well flatlined except for the one personnel, just because we had pulled a full-time employee into the general fund from the neighborhood guild expenditures in the enterprise fund. So that's what that one driver is for our budget. Everything else is pretty well zeroed out.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark on facilities? All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. All right. Next is Chief Ewing Chow.
There we are. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening. Would like to take a few minutes and go over the proposed budget that I have here. Basically, the bulk of the police budget is personnel expenses, salaries and benefits, and you will see an increase there due to contractual agreements and salary increases as well as benefit increases. The one thing that we are proposing is increasing one officer from 55 to 56. You will see that. That increase was already approved on a temporary basis by the town council previously. So if this is accepted and adopted, it actually creates a budget neutral from last year. We had an officer that was out for a long-term injury. We need to replace that position with someone else and that temporary spot. And so we were basically paying for 56 officers then. So proposing one additional officially would still remain at 56, but be budget neutral. When we go through services, you'll see an increase there. Services are, we are going to be asking for additional money to help fund our crisis intervention team. And what that is a collaboration between 4 other departments in Washington County. We're all going to share cost to pay for this program, which basically allows us to have a clinician to come into our department and handle mental health issues with us, with the police, respond out. The point of that is to provide assistance to those that are in crisis and hopefully provide assistance to them. So, you know, in the future, there isn't a need to call for the police or call for the medics or anything like that. So that is a good program that we're looking to keep going. Right, currently the program is grant funded, but we're unsure on the grants coming up in the future. So we need to project out some cost sharing with the other departments that utilize the clinician. One of the other, for services, some of the other increases are computer-related expenses, specifically software. We're having to spend more on software this year due to the fact that we are no longer getting a justice assistance grant, which supplied us some money to offset some costs. We also are going to be, or presently do have a police scheduling system software that we need to use to schedule and track people that are here at work and to build our schedules, because we have a lot of officers and it's sometimes difficult when we're 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So that really does assist us with implementation of staff and getting them where they need to be. The other part of that is offsite disaster recovery when it comes to software. That is necessary in case something happens at our police station and there's some unimaginable event there where we lose all of our computer systems. The data that we have and the information that we have is offloaded somewhere else to offsite, so we're able to access that information. We also had to increase and put some, ask for some more money to pay for new computers, things of that nature, hardware that we do need to continually replace, just because they do become worn and broken after a certain period of time. The other thing under services that was going to need an increase was educational expenses for our department. Under Rhode Island law, the police department or police officers do go to school and they do get educated. So part of that is we try to project and ask how many officers would like to continue with their education, and that has increased. So we had to ask for more money in order to pay for the education of the officers. And we had to increase general training budget to some degree for mandated trainings, for things of that nature, in order to stay consistent with our accreditation process. There's training that we need to do annually that is required, and with that costs money. So we had to ask for additional money for that. If we look at commodities and the decrease there, that was basically, we looked at projected out fuel consumption, and I felt as though we didn't need that much fuel. So we were able to take some of that out and decrease that amount. And under capital outlay, you see there, that was primarily savings. We had projected to purchase 5 additional new police vehicles for the upcoming fiscal year 21-22. But under further review and trying to be as budget conscious as we could, we decided to hold back on the purchase of 5 and only go with the purchase of 4. It doesn't mean that that 5th vehicle is not still usable. It certainly is, but we're going to hold back for this year on that just to do some cost savings. And so you'll see at the bottom there, we ended up a little bit with our overall budget from last year, a total increase of 1.96% overall. And that's it. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Looks like Councilman Rose.
So, Chief, I just wanted to say how excited I am to hear about the CIT program. that's exactly what I had in mind when I suggested expanding on our goals and objectives to include what we could do to be of more assistance to the police department. So I'm really excited about that. I hope it all works out. I'm sure it will. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's worked out now. We have the clinician that works for us now. She's in as much as we need her. She's in every week in our department, helping us out and, you know, going out there and trying to give as much help as we can to our citizens. And, you know, it is part of the goals and objectives. And, you know, we really want to continue with this program. We feel as though has exponential, it can grow exponentially if we continue on. So we're looking forward to it and maintaining that.
That's awesome. Thank you again. I appreciate
you.
hearing about it.
We get Stanley as a bonus, don't we?
That is correct.
And Councilwoman Bergner.
I too wanted to echo the mental health professional in the police department. I think that is wonderful. A couple of things. So is this position or this clinical person going to shift over to the community health? I mean, we talked about making a new personnel office. Now we might have a new Department of Community Health. And so how will that impact that? Is that position going to shift over there?
So the funding for that position might shift over there. And we'll have to work through that as we build next year's budget. The truth is, we're looking at a very small investment this year. It's $23,000, and the program has been successful. But we are sharing one clinician with 4 communities. It's, we do have a good opportunity once a week, or for a short period of time each week. If we continue to find that this is a useful intervention, there's been talk about the clinician being available on fire scenes, being available, when you have medical crises. The police have been the ones who started this program or initiated the focus on mental health in crises. But there is a broader public safety arena in which a clinician, a therapist, somebody who can come in and help out would be beneficial and useful. So yes, it's possible that this funding shifts to the Department of Community Health as we go forward. But the outsourced clinician model is probably the model we're going to need even into the future. I don't anticipate, that person becoming a Department of Community Health employee anytime in the near future. Although in the long run, that might work, but it's way too early in the process to say that that's what we ought to be doing.
So my question, I guess, for the chief is, how will the creation of the Department of Community Health impact your current operations? Because that was under your division and it could potentially be moved. It's proposed to be moved. So how would it affect your department and your work?
Currently, we work hand in hand with our EMS on a daily basis. Our clinician that we have now, we say it's embedded with the police department, but certainly when medics are called to certain scenes to people that are in crisis, we're taking that information and we're involving the clinician with that as well. So, it may be a shift of services to under a certain division or under an umbrella, but the bottom line is they're still going to be servicing the police department and the EMS division together. And we hope to continue this. We hope to grow this program. And I just want to say that not only does the clinician assist citizens, but the clinician is also there to assist our staff. As we all know, police work, public safety can be very stressful. Can be traumatic at some times, and we have a clinician there to support our staff as well. And officer wellness is a very concerning thing for me. I want to make sure that our staff are well mentally, so they're able to perform their job and continue on with their careers.
So from your perspective on the creation of the EMS as a department, is that a good thing? I mean, is it something that you think is a good change? I mean, because it's coming from, I'm trying to understand why it would leave the leadership of the police department and become its own entity. And
Well, I think that not necessarily leave the leadership of the police department. I think that maybe a shift to more community-based health initiative that would also include, say, the idea of having a clinician. And I think that Craig Stanley, when he comes on, can talk a little bit more about that. And I think, I don't want to speak for him, but the idea of being able to do more for your community, whether it's on an EMS level, checking on people at home before they have to call for assistance. The same would be checking on people at home before they get into crisis with mental health, which would, stop the recidivism rates of calling for help by the police, to try to get that person on the track of leading a very happy and more a life that, they're not hindered by mental health issues. So I think, either way you look at it, we're still going to be supplying as much assistance as we can to our citizens in our community, whether it's on an EMS level or police level. We're going to be working together either or.
Chief, I'd like to follow up on that because I want to make sure we're clear on this point. Currently, the relationship between the Emergency Medical Services Division and the police department is not one of strict command and control, is it? Craig really does operate largely in.
Correct.
Yeah. So when the chief, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure that we've got this right. When you say it's not necessarily leaving the leadership of the police department, what you mean is it's not necessarily a major change in the day-to-day operations of either the police department or the emergency medical services, now community health department. Is that right?
That's a very good assessment there, Rob. Absolutely. Craig Stanley is pretty much the chief in charge of EMS. We work together as under the public safety umbrella, and we are certainly not going to be doing anything that's going to make any changes to assisting our citizens in the community.
It's sort of a quirky problem, Councilwoman Bergner, because under the charter, there must be a Department of Public Safety in South Kingstown. And really, there is not. The town manager is the director, is the head of public safety in South Kingstown, but the department doesn't really exist. So for administrative purposes, for budget purposes, for sort of dealing with personnel, the EMS was stood up under the police umbrella simply because it eliminated the direct report, I think. It's more a function of convenience than it was of necessity.
just about the bike patrols, I'm just very curious if there's going to be any expansion of bike patrols, given the feedback we heard last week about traffic and people and whatever.
Yeah, so every year, Councilwoman, we have 2 officers that are assigned full-time to the bike patrol unit. We are not changing that. There will be 2 officers that are assigned out on the bike. They work varying shifts, mostly daytime, but they do some evenings as well. And like we had previously discussed about being a presence and out there is, you know, they try to hit all areas of town, whether it's the bike path, Main Street, the beach areas, just to be a presence and just to handle those, you know, quality of life issues that may come up, whether it's parking, drinking, littering, whatever it might be. So we will be out there this summer. We're not planning on cutting that at all. And you're going to see our staff out on bikes.
Great, thank you. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate that.
Any other questions for the chief?
We've still got them for animal welfare, though.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm on again. So so the animal welfare division, we're doing a little bit of a structuring change. Currently, our animal control officers work under the auspice of solely the police department. That's the way it's been. That's the way it's always been. My idea here is to shift our animal control officers over to an animal welfare division, dovetail them up with the animal shelter staff, have them work hand in hand with the animal shelter, and to provide better services to our community, to provide better services to the animals, to work with the animals, to care for the animals. I think that is definitely going to be beneficial. Part of it also is that in order to structure an animal welfare division, we wanted to be able to hire a superintendent of animal welfare that would oversee this division. And we are in the process of doing that now. So you'll see that we do have an increase of asking for the superintendent, which is +1. You'll see a decrease in salaries simply because we're anticipating that once we do get a superintendent there, we do not have the need to have as many part-time employees present and at the shelter, because we're going to be upstaffed a little bit more with that additional superintendent who will be working directly at the shelter as well. As you will see on commodities, you see we went up a little bit there for that. And the reason why that was going up is we had an increase in electrical costs. So we had to come up with that, and that was just for usage ROP wise. So you see a small increase there. So the reality is that we are asking for a small increase, mostly through the personnel expenditures, salaries and benefits, et cetera.
So Chief, I do want to just raise the issue because it comes up periodically around these sorts of services. The issue of outsourcing or privatizing the animal welfare service. Any thoughts on that we're ready to share with the council at this point?
At this point, I don't think that we're certainly would want to look at that right now. We're on the precipice of getting a superintendent to kind of control the animal welfare division. I think that I think that we can have a lot to offer by having the shelter and having the animal control officer there, and it being run by a superintendent that is going to have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge on that. Certainly, I'm not prepared to right at this moment to see, I haven't done any research on privatization or anything like that, but I think moving forward, for now, a superintendent would be a good move, and really bring the animal welfare division together and be able to, like I said, provide better services to our community.
All right, I see Councilwoman Bergner, is your hand up? I know it's been Councilwoman Rose.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. So how would the superintendent position differ from Anne Maria's position, and would she be considered for that position? I think she's been there a long time, so
I want to be careful.
that'd be great.
Yeah, I want to be careful. We really shouldn't be talking about potential job transfers or stuff like that. I mean, she may have applied. I don't know. She has applied in the past for this position. This we do know. That's a matter of public record. But I don't want to, if the chief's in the middle of interviews, I don't want to sort of prejudice the hiring process. The difference, I'll let the chief speak to the differences between the current position and the supervisor's position. I just want to caution against sort of talking about particular applicants for a pending job position, Chief.
Sure, thanks for that, Rob.
Okay, so the difference with the superintendent would be basically a non-union position that would be overseeing both the animal control officers and the shelter itself. Anne Marie has been there for quite some time. She is the shelter manager. She is currently a unionized employee, and she does oversee the operations there. And the operations or the shelter itself is overseen by the police department. the idea of having an animal shelter superintendent there is to, the police aren't subject matter experts when it comes to animal welfare and care. And we're hoping that during this process, we'll get a shelter superintendent to kind of, or should I say, that will be able to oversee everything and make it a well, not that it's not well run now, but make it even a better run organization than it is now.
So really what we're contemplating with this new position is moving from having the administrative functions, the sort of personnel, disciplinary stuff, moving from the police department doing personnel matters if they come up, moving from having the police department doing the budget. The supervisor will be responsible for maintaining and executing the budget. It'll be dealing with procurement, which currently is now done by the police department. So it's really doing the sort of administrative functions that heretofore have been done within the police department right there in the animal shelter. It's really moving to having a professional, for want of a better phrase, bureaucrat in the shelter. Not just someone who is, and I don't mean to be pejorative when I say not just, but not someone who's just focused on the animals, but also focused on the nonsense that comes with dealing with human beings, such as budgets, such as procurement law, such as the personnel matters.
So just to clarify, I'm wondering why we wouldn't just expand that? And also, can you just clarify who was responsible for presenting the budget in the past for the animal shelter?
It's been the police department. This budget was developed, Chief, you can speak.
Yeah, so prior to me taking over in years past, the budget was presented by the animal shelter. Last year, I believe that changed under Chief Jaber, or maybe even the year before as well, where the police department was presenting the budget that was to the council.
So in the past, it has been the animal shelter manager, Chief?
Yes, and that was, I believe, a couple years ago, but that changed with, I believe, when Chief Jaber came in to play.
Thank you for clarifying that. So again, I'm wondering if this is a position that we might just be able to expand, given that the manager has budget experience. I just want to.
So it is more than budget. Yeah, it is more than budget. It is, compliance with all animal humane, laws and statutes. We have to have someone who's familiar with and can faithfully execute the state statutes with regard to animals. It is procurement law and procurement practices, which has not been on the plate of the manager, to the best of my understanding. Certainly not in the time that I've been here, and if it was previously, I can't tell you what changed or why it changed.
Okay, I'm seeing a little bit of a pattern with replacing positions and not expanding or just want to make a note of that. Thanks.
Yep. I'm happy to provide some more information about that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Rob, am I mistaken, but this position we authorized this last year, did we not? This is just one and fill. This is not a new position. This was.
That is correct.
Budgeted for in the last budget.
That is correct.
Okay, that's all. Just wanted to make sure I understood where we were at.
Yeah, we tried to fill it and were successful in our first attempt.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilwoman Bergen.
This isn't directly related, but I read your budget message and talk about shared services and procurement. So I'm trying to understand why we would decentralize some things when other things we're trying to centralize. It might not apply here, but I'm just philosophically, like if we're trying to do, someone who's an expert in procurement, why would we then?
Sure, we're not trying to find a procurement officer for the animal shelter. That's not what I mean to suggest. But every department has to work with the procurement official in doing purchases. So even if you were to have a centralized department that was shared between, say, the school department and all of the town government, you would still have somebody in each division or each office who's got to work with the procurement official to write the contracts, to come up with the specifications, if not actually writing the contract themselves. There's a degree of familiarity with procurement rules, a degree of familiarity with APRA. There's a degree of familiarity with the rules of administration that any supervisor needs to have, and above and beyond that which non-supervisory personnel need to have. We expect our facility supervisors, we expect our supervisors of all programs, all division heads, to know the rules well enough not to run afoul of the rules. It's a level of technical sophistication that is more than what we expect typically from those who are simply running the operations based on the direction given to them by supervisors or superintendents.
And then just the second question about, you talked about privatizing, but have we talked to Narragansett maybe about shared services and collaboration? Maybe there's some efficiency to be gained there. And, I don't necessarily think that privatizing is the answer a lot of times.
So yeah, I'm not necessarily a huge advocate for privatization of government services either. This is one of those areas where the issue comes up quite often. In South Kingstown, I understand we have 2 private shelters and the public shelter as well. So there's the potential for consolidation of services just because you have operations that are already up and running. With regard to Narragansett, this is already a shared service with Narragansett.
So they pay us something?
Chief, you can speak to what they pay.
Yes, I believe, off the top of my head, without diving in, I want to say it's $60,000 or so a year that they pay towards services they have their own animal control officers, but in order for them to use our shelter, they do give us some money to do that. And that's for us to house their animals, to adopt the animals out, etc.
Zach, do we have quick access to that number? If not, we can report it back, but.
It's about 70,000.
70? I was sorry, it was off by 10.
All right, thank you. I see both Councilwoman Bergner and Councilwoman Rose have your hands up, but I'm not sure if those are current. Yes, Councilwoman Rose.
Yep, I just wanted to add to when we're thinking about these positions, and I totally hear you, Rob, that the area of expertise in proposed new positions might be more than what is expected of those current positions now. I just want to go back to, when we were talking about goals and objectives and making sure that there is adequate training available to
Agreed.
existing employees so that they are available or that they are eligible and trained to,
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that this is one of those places where we need to be thinking about that in particular. That's right. I think that if we were providing training to some of our employees in positions that are going to change over time, we've got to make sure that we're giving them the opportunity to grow with the position, to grow with the activity, to grow with the industry standards as those standards change. It is clearly the case that animal shelter standards have changed over the last 20 or 30 years. We have not been providing the training that we should be for all of our employees associated with the animal welfare activity.
Any final questions on animal welfare? All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
We'll let you off the hook now.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Actually, no, unless we've got.
Nope. Harbor Patrol, Mike Stack is going to speak on that, the harbor master himself.
That's great.
Thank you.
So we're bringing in Mike Stack.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Mike. How are you?
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Mike Stack. I'm the harbor master for the town. And our mission is to provide for a safe atmosphere for the boating public on the waterways of the town and to manage the moorings. This year, the budget is down slightly, about 1.25%. And I believe it was down last year as well. And other than that, there's not much change. We have about 225 moorings, and there's 52 people on the wait list currently. We saw a pretty large uptick in recreational boating last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, happy to take any questions if anybody has any questions.
Well, thank you, Mike. Pretty straightforward, and thank you for keeping an eye on those boaters for us.
Sure thing. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Mike. Councilwoman Bergner, you had a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize, I apologize. I didn't know that we had a harbor patrol. So if you
okay.
could just, so it's a part-time, just give me a little sketch of, it's just you're a one-man show?
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. So yeah, briefly, the harbor patrol is myself, which is a part-time FTE. And in the summer, we hire 2 seasonal assistant harbor masters to assist me in patrolling the town's waterways and keeping an eye on the moorings. They work 40 hours a week from Memorial Day through Labor Day. And so they augment me, and then I work year round in managing the moorings and communicating with the public, attending the Waterfront Commission meetings, meetings with the Coast Guard, CRMC as needed, and various other federal and state entities relating to the waterways of the town.
So you're clearly just not really earning a lot of revenue from the moorings, obviously. It's on different slide, right? The revenue.
Mooring revenue actually supports the entire budget of Harbor Patrol. Zach could speak better to how the money comes in and is reallocated, but the revenue that's generated through the moorings funds the entire cost of the Harbor Patrol department.
So mooring fees last year, actual for fiscal 20, were 38,000. We're projecting them to be in 21, 22 to be about flat at 36,000, which basically covers the cost of the program. But you're correct, Council. It's in the revenue section under one of the police revenues. So it would be under the public safety revenue. So, but here we're looking strictly at the expenditure side.
Thank you. I didn't know. So thank you.
Sure.
Mike, you know you're successful when you're not known. I mean, fireworks went off without a hitch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Had successful years with that.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike. We'll see you around.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, next up is the Fire Alarm Communications Group, Lance Whaley.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My camera is not working, but anyway, I'm Lance Lay, the fire alarm superintendent. My division has myself, one other full-time employee and a part-time employee. And the budget is pretty much flatlined except for the contractual obligations for the 2 union people in my shop. And other than that, we pretty much work with every department in the town, whether it's for radio communications, helping Lori outrun data lines, phone issues, radio issues. Pretty much if there's anything wrong, the fire alarm division gets called in one way or another. Anything from burglar alarms to fire alarm systems. And
cable generally.
Sorry, what's that?
And cable generally. We've
Oh yeah,
for cables
over
that work.
100.
Yeah.
100 miles of cable in the air still we maintain with 2.5 of us. And we are transitioning over to radio box,
Right.
but we still have to maintain that cable that's up there.
And further, this division has been leading the charge on consolidating the town's public safety radio network. Historically, the radio network in South Kingstown has been managed loosely by each individual public safety entity. The fire districts have managed their own radio equipment. They've purchased their own radio equipment. They've maintained their own radio equipment. The police department has done its equipment. We're consolidating that for the last couple of years. And that consolidation will culminate with the purchase of a new network, radio network, with the funding that was provided by the bond last November. So Craig, I'm sorry, not Craig. Lance has been leading the charge on that and will be the coordinator of the public radio network as we go forward. We're still working on what that looks like. It's always a learning curve. It's always a process when you're standing up something new, especially when you're trying to pull pieces from 2 different fire districts and trying to coordinate with the police department in a new way. But what we anticipate is that Craig's division will be the go-to division with regard to radios, public radio equipment. So eventually, when we get the network built, we'll see in this budget in the future purchases for radio replacement and this sort of thing, regardless of where that is. We've got to figure out the mechanism to make sure that we're reimbursed from fire districts if they are going to be purchasing through that central authority, but certainly from the town divisions or departments like the Public Works Department or the Police Department. Purchases should all be done through an agency, a division that has expertise in that area. And this is the group that has that expertise.
Actually, that bid opening is tomorrow at 10 for the radio project.
Hoorah, we've been waiting for that.
A long time.
All right.
Yeah, let us know how that goes, maybe in the town manager's report on Monday.
Yeah, we can send out a notice tomorrow when we know the result. We may not actually know the result depending on how complex the proposals are. It may take some time to figure out what's in and out of these proposals. They're likely to be fairly complex. So we can at least let you know how many we got in and maybe a range.
All right, well, thank you for letting me present.
Thank you, Lance.
Okay.
Any questions for Lance before he leaves? All right. Yep. Have a good night, Lance.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to bring in Craig Stanley, who can talk about emergency medical services and the new community paramedics concept. One thing I will note while we're bringing Craig in is that we've actually had a very good year in terms of revenue for ambulance transport. We're projecting
revenue in the $1 million range for next year, and actually have, I'm sorry, actual this year is $1 million. We're projecting about 990. Is that right, Zach? No, go ahead. Correct my recollection here.
Actual for 2020 was 650,000. Fiscal 21, we increased it to 850,000. Working with Craig, we believe we'll hit that mark. And for fiscal 22, we have proposed to move that up to 950. And a lot of that is due to switching our billing provider that handles the services. Craig can talk in more detail about that, but we have better reporting metrics, more aggressive collection practices, and Craig, with the additional shift, we've seen an uptick in the revenue. And Craig can give more detail behind the projections and how they come about with that.
I just want to point out that the revenue is significant and does offset the cost of the programs dramatically. I will also point out, just so folks remember this, we do not charge South Kingstown residents for transportation. So those fees are not coming from residents who are paying taxes. Those are from non-tax paying service providers, or persons to whom services are provided. Sorry. Craig, we got you yet?
Yes. Craig Stanley with EMS, and thank you for allowing me to present. Our budget for the next fiscal year is fairly tight compared to before. We're seeing increase with salaries due to contract obligations and benefits. And then our other increases are through commodities, which result from medical supplies. As we get busier, we use more equipment. So we see a little increase in that. We also see increases, as other departments have mentioned, computer licenses for some of the software that we have to keep running. We're seeing it with that. And also some capital projects. One of the things that we're continuing our project is to apply ballistic vests for our paramedics. So we started that last year, and we have a slight increase in that to complete that project. So each of our paramedics will have a ballistic vest for their protection. And that's really it. We're pretty tight as far as the other departments, the other sections with that. So any questions, particularly with the budget, I'll certainly answer.
So Craig, I'd like for some description about the new title that I'm proposing here, which is Chief of Community Public Health. Can you tell us what a community public health department does, and how you envision that working here?
Yeah, and really EMS traditionally has been in the mode of we respond to the call, we treat the patient and transport to the hospital. Really the EMS of the future is really moving beyond that, of involving community health to really, from my standpoint, the best call we respond to is the one that we prevent. And that's through community education. And really the community health is a part of EMS that throughout the country has really taken off, to where we work with also hospitals in preventing patients that may have chronic diseases, where we may have within the department a section that will follow up on patients in the community, work with the hospitals, and prevent them really from, it does two things. One, keeping the patient healthy. They're not always going to the hospital. We're not always having to transport them. We certainly do if they need to, but also it keeps them healthy, where we might be able to keep them on their medication, follow up with them. They don't go to the hospital where they're tying up, resources, keeping really them from being admitted to the hospital. And with certain patients through Medicare, Medicaid, if they're readmitted within a 30-day period, the hospital is not able to recoup any revenue on that. So the win-win is one is you're following up with patients that might call us often, keeping them from actually going to the hospital healthy, and then it keeps us from being in service for calls that might be more life-threatening, and keeping them from going to the hospital and have to stay in there. One of the things also, as Chief Ewing Chow mentioned, we work very closely with the Washington County Behavioral Health. That's an important topic for me because we see in EMS, particularly our volume increasing dealing with mental health issues. And the answer, it may not always be taking the person to the emergency room. It might be finding them a resource. It might be at the scene to defuse the situation, whether that's through a CIT person, the police officer, or us, and maybe finding alternate means for them to go instead of going to the ER, maybe going to a different facility or arranging for follow-up with that patient. I don't know if that answered some of.
So the thing that struck me in one of the conversations was somebody made the statement, if we call them and check in, they may not be calling us for the emergency, intervention. And I think that summarized for me what the model is trying to do, is to make sure that we're proactive, reaching out to people and not just reactive, waiting for them to call for crisis assistance.
Yeah, well, I think there's that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and it got to be a cliche for a reason. So I definitely appreciate, approaching it that way. Go on, Craig.
No, and I think for our community in South Kingstown, there's a good population where this will definitely benefit the people that we serve. And really would be a win-win for the citizens, the hospital system, and us. We're trying to do, keep people healthy. As I say, the best call to respond to is the one that you prevent. And that, to me, I think that's a very positive thing for us to do.
Councilwoman Rose.
Yeah, just really quick, I want to say how exciting this sounds and this collaboration across departments. It's awesome. It's exciting to hear, and I'm really impressed.
Yeah, and ironically today I had a Zoom meeting with members of the CIT team and also Washington County Behavioral Health, and they have just been, and I had been working on this for a couple of years, trying to move forward. I knew the direction we needed to head. And I learned today that they have received a grant for this from the mental health standpoint to start moving in that direction to really help with dealing with the mental health issues that we deal with. And we generally, I guess, explain it, we respond to the same call. So we're all going to the same call, whether it might be a mental health need or from chronic illness. Sometimes they bleed into each other. So to me, it's a one stop of funneling through, and I look at it as we get there, we solve problems. And maybe the solution is not to take you to the emergency room. Maybe the solution is to find you a referral through mental health, and we can take care of that. So to me, it really encompasses everything that where we need to head.
Great. Thanks, Greg. I don't see any. Councilwoman Berger.
So could we just talk a little bit about what you anticipate, like the startup of a new department would be? I mean.
Yeah, so the only request I've received, and this is sort of the model that we have to pursue given our fiscal constraints. We cannot stand up big departments overnight. This is to the point of, the person, HR, human resources, and training. We have to work our way into it. You stand up, you get the focus, you pay attention to the issues, you identify the issues, you build a program as you go. And the same is true here as well. The only thing Craig has asked for at this point is an slight increase in his salary to compensate him for the additional work associated with beginning to coordinate things that heretofore have been coordinated by the police department or have not been done. But over the course of the next year, we will identify all of the opportunities, or many of the opportunities. I suppose you can't identify them all in a short period of time. We'll identify many of the opportunities And the department will come back and say, these are the things we ought to be doing to deal with mental health, to deal with community preventive health issues. So right now, what you're talking about is participating in sort of outside programs and beginning to figure out how we plug ourselves into the broader community mental health and community preventive health systems, networks that are out there. So it's not going to cost us a lot to start, but it will get us thinking about things that we haven't done before and will eventually result in asks. Eventually, we are going to be coming back next year, the year after that, with recommendations and suggestions on how we can improve community mental health. It will not be free forever, but for this year, what we anticipate is simply getting our feet in the water, simply starting to begin thinking about, to begin designing a program. We could, in theory, do that without any additional time from Craig, without putting any additional burden on Craig, but that's not fair. It's just not the right way to do that. If we're going to ask him to take on more responsibility, in my view, we have to step up and compensate him. So that the only additional expense in this proposed budget is the difference between a superintendent of a program, if you will, a director of a program, and a chief. We're moving the position from a, actually, Zach, you're going to have to help me here. It's 13 to,
it's a grade 13 to a grade 15. The increase from where we're at now is about 86.3. Moving to grades 15, step 0 would be 93. So about a $6,000 increase in salary.
Any other questions for Greg? Very good. Thank you, Craig. Very exciting work. Look forward to hearing more.
Right. And next, we're going to bring in Rich Bourbonnais.
Can you hear me?
We got you.
All right, good. Hi, I'm Rich Bourbonnais. I'm the town engineer, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about what we have, what our budget looks like, or what my budget looks like. But generally, three aspects here: the tree warden, the town engineer, the engineering staff, and then also streetlights. Engineering is generally similar to past years. You'll notice perhaps an increase primarily due to software costs this year, specifically AutoCAD. We're on a 3-year license schedule for that, so this year that's due, and so that'll be paid this year. But then generally next year it'll go back to being less. And we save a little bit of money by going a 3-year license on that, so that's why we do that. It bulks up. Tree warden is generally the same. There is a stipend increase proposed. I believe it's approximately $100, which equates to about 1.2% of that budget. Street lighting, I think, is probably the more interesting topic, and it's what I think it's going down significantly from past years. Generally, in the past, we spent about $190,000 on street lights. There's about 1,400 street lights in town. That $190,000 has gone to three aspects, or three particular costs. One would be for the transmission, and then, of course, the utility cost itself, the electricity itself. The transmission and electricity itself are what we normally pay for an electric bill. Everybody pays that. But then we were also paying a facilities charge. The facilities charge was effectively a rental fee for the lights themselves. National Grid owns the lights. we pay a rental fee. They maintain the lights, they replace them if anything happens, and they maintain them as they, through the year. But we have now purchased those lights, so we own them. So $110,000 of that $190,000 is gone, and so we'll now have those savings. In addition to that, we are preparing to transfer all of the state, the lights that are on state roads to be moved over to the state. And the state will then maintain those lights. That's another 30% of the lighting that'll go over to the state roads, and then the fees for the electricity costs, and of course the transmission will be paid by the state. Now we're able to do that, to transfer it to the state, because we are upgrading all of the lighting in town to LED lights. And that process is ongoing now. By July 1st, we're expecting that all the lights will be upgraded to LED. And at that point, we're able to transfer the lights over to the state. We're actually asking that the state roads be done first as part of this process, so we can even maybe transfer them over to the state even earlier. So that the future budget now looks more like we're anticipating about $48,000 in electricity cost in the transmission. And then another $15,000 or so that would go towards the maintenance of those lights. Anything that's it'll be beyond warranty at that point, because the lighting now that we're having installed will be all warranted for a period of time. Now, I'd say that $48,000 for transmission and lighting and electric costs, it's a little bit conservative, because it doesn't also take into account that now we have LED lights, which are generally a little bit more efficient. So we could even observe even more savings over time. But the expected maintenance cost about 15 grand, we think is probably about right. And that's what we're going to use going forward. So I think of those topics, that's what I have. And unless there are questions on this. So you'll notice a decrease in the budget at this point right now. And that's why.
Thank you, Rich. No, we've been looking at those street light replacements for, I think, as long as I've been on the council. So it's good to see it finally happening. Yeah, excellent.
And hitting the spreadsheets. This is a significant reduction in a major department's budget.
The cost of the replacement for the lighting was a little pricey. I think after we receive some money back for the lighting replacement. I think it was maybe National Grid or whatever, incentive dollars. It ends up being about, 450 grand. But we'll be the savings we make over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll end up paying that back. And then following those years, it'll all be savings that we should see. We'll observe those savings. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Rich. Any questions for Rich on that? Okay.
We're going to bring Paul in next. Is that right? Yeah. Is Paul Ferrendi in the audience, Susan?
Yes, he is.
All right.
And he is here in your group.
Hey, Paul, it's all you.
Good evening, council members, town manager and town staff. Paul Ferrandi, Highway Superintendent. Thank you for allowing me to present the highway budget, which is pretty basic and level funded from last year to this year. Really, the only increase we've had is for salary and wages benefits, which are contractual in nature. The highway division, as you've seen, our professional work is working through town, are responsible for maintaining the road infrastructure, town roads and roadways, which includes whether it be street sweeping, snow removal, signage, drainage infrastructure, the town drainage infrastructure. We lend support to just about any department that needs our labor or our equipment. Anything from helping the clerk's office set up polling for the recent election to working jointly with recreation and wastewater on small construction jobs that we try to keep in-house save the town some significant funds. Again, it's a variety of stuff that we do. I'm sure you've seen us working on the roadways. We have a lot of good dedicated highway employees that are dedicated to the town. Gladly answer any of the questions.
Paul, Councilwoman Bergner, your hand is up, but I think that might be from before. All right, any questions for Paul about the highway program? All right, seeing none, Paul, it looks like you are going to get off the hook easy tonight.
I'm here if you need me.
All right.
Thank you, Paul. All right, and Terry Murphy.
Good evening, Town Council and Rob and Susan. Thank you for allowing me to present the Parks and Recreation budget this evening. Before I get into the general fund Parks and Recreation expenditures, just a reminder that we have several different funds that fall under Parks and Recreation. There's a distinction between the Guild Fund and the Rec Center Fund and this general fund budget. So just as a kind of a reminder that we have programming that falls into different categories within the Parks and Recreation under our umbrella. So for the general fund accounts, we have 6 cost centers, and those include administration, park maintenance, athletics, aquatics, leisure services, and Stepping Stone Preschool, which is also referred to in the budget as creative activities. You'll notice that for the 21-22 proposed budget, we are showing under a 1% increase for the entire budget. And what I will do is go through each cost center and just give you an idea of where the increases or decreases lie within this budget. And the first one is the administration budget, and you will see that we are down within that budget by 13%. And that is primarily due to personnel changes. In terms of salaries, we have a retirement and a new person coming in at the lower step, benefit changes, and reallocation of one staff person's percentages to the appropriate budgets, and that has to do with the rec center. So you'll see a little bit of a difference in the rec center salaries that account for a slight increase. That's really it within the administration budget that reflects the largest change. We also had a retirement within this year's budget that was budgeted and will not be realized in FY 21-22. Any questions on administration? The next cost center is our Parks Division, and I think you're all well aware of the work that our Parks Division does. Our staff maintains hundreds of acres of town parks and properties, town facilities, town hall, and the library grounds, and where we also do athletic facilities for the school department as well. This cost center is showing a 3% increase, and again, that reflects primarily personnel and benefits figures. We have gone up in the seasonal employee pay rate. We are adjusting those wages so that we can remain competitive and be able to hire good personnel for the seasonal positions. Those are long-term seasonal positions, and we're fortunate to have over the years had very dedicated and professional staff in those positions. We want to continue to see that. We need those seasonal positions in order to do the job from spring through late fall. That is essentially the biggest change in the Parks Division budget. Any questions? Parks? Okay, as we move down, our athletics cost center reflects a decrease. And just as a little bit of background, the way we prepare our programming budgets, we drill down, and I credit our recreation superintendent, Kathy Larlam, and her staff with doing very detailed budget prep for these types of programs. Every program cost center has a budget that's drilled down to the very program and projected out for the next year. Within the athletics budget, you'll notice that we have a decrease. We shifted our budget, how we were preparing our budgets based on the COVID-19 implications that really affected the 1920 budget year, the last quarter of that year, and most of this year. We're still feeling those implications with our programs. That's not to say we haven't run programs. As a matter of fact, we've been very fortunate, and our staff has tried very hard to be able to run as many programs as possible for our community. And we've been able to do that by adjusting and maintaining all regulations, but also being able to have as many people as possible participate in things like Discovery Camp and recreational basketball and the softball league, things that we can do with less people, but we are still running these programs. So we've looked ahead into FY 21-22, and we've been very conservative with how we're moving forward. We know that if a switch isn't going to be flipped and that we're going to be back to full capacity in all of these programs, people are going to be cautious. We know we have a percentage of the population that is raring to go. They want to get out there. They want to be able to participate in programs. And then we know there are other folks who are tentative and will take their time in coming back. So we've prepared these budgets based on that rationale going forward. So you'll notice that our programming budgets, some are lower for this year, and athletics is one of those. And just to give you a sense, so for this budget, athletics includes our programs like the softball leagues, the outdoor camps, flag football, we have a track program, all of these outdoor programs that take place in our parks or at our athletic facilities fall under this budget. And then we move to aquatics. The beach program is one area where in 1920 and the start of this year, we actually we improved in this category because the beach was one place that people could go and enjoy over the course of the summer when the positivity rates were lower. We did require additional funds in order to sufficiently staff the beach with additional staff members who actually counted heads at the walk-on paths to the beach, as well as at the main entrance, in order for us to be able to abide by COVID-19 regulations. But we did have many people buy season passes for the beach and really support the beach, even though they knew that there was the potential that maybe they couldn't get into the parking lot their first time around. But the beach did very well. We also in 1920, actually in this year, we purchased a piece of equipment through the capital budget that was planned, and that was the beach groomer. And that has enabled us to, towards the second half of the beach season last year, we were able to have a consistently good beach look. Basically, the sand was groomed, the seaweed was picked up. Prior to that, it was kind of a, it was a crapshoot, not really knowing what the conditions were going to be like and not having the correct equipment to be able to remove the seaweed that would pile up on the beach. So we're pleased to have that, and we're pleased to go into 21-22 knowing that we're going to be able to provide a consistent beach patron experience on a day-to-day basis. So our budget is up significantly by 23, almost 24%. And that is because we are basing it as if we are going into this with COVID regulations still in place. We don't know what May is going to bring. We're hopeful, but we're being cautious. We want to be able to have a budget in place that is going to allow us to have staffing to handle COVID-19 protocols. So we are up with our total budget. We have increased wages. Again, we're in competition with neighboring shoreline communities who are hiring the same lifeguards and gate personnel in order to operate their beaches. So we want to remain competitive and really hire top-notch employees like we've done in the past to be able to manage and operate the beach. We have, as you know, last month you approved the beach policy. So we have, in order to sustain the expenditures, is we did increase the seasonal beach passes by $10, both for residents and non-residents. Again, we're going into the season preparing as if we're still in a COVID-19 atmosphere. And to start off, we will be selling season passes to residents only like we did last year. And as things open up and restrictions loosen, there will be the opportunity to open that up to non-residents. But we're anticipating a strong beach season. I know people are really looking forward to it, and our operations, we expect, will be as they always are in terms of customer service and having a nice community beach for residents and visitors to avail themselves of throughout the summer. Does anyone have any questions?
Councilwoman Bergner?
I just have a question. What is encompassed in professional services for aquatics? You have it at 50,000?
Mm-hmm. So that's a very good question. I neglected to say part of the beach program is our surf camp, our summer surf camps.
Okay.
And so the surf camp program, we hire an independent contractor who runs those camps, and we charge a particular fee. A percentage of that fee goes to the independent contractor, and that's what that cost is. So if we're looking at our revenues, our beach revenues, we project our overall revenues to be at, let me see here, 260,000. I'm just making sure I'm reading this correctly. We have 242,000, I'm sorry, almost 250,000 for beach revenue. And part of that is the surf camp and skimboard camp revenue.
Okay, so because I happened to, it caught my eye with the parks because it's so small, and then you have $100,000, or not, you're proposing 102,000 for athletics, and then 50. So it's all of the camps, like tell me again. I get the surf camp is the aquatics one, but what's the one for athletics?
So for athletics, that encompasses a number of different programs. So there's the summer camps, like all of the sports camps. There is the adult softball leagues that are run, that generates revenue and is self-sustaining. There is the Discovery Camp program. Excuse me, that's under leisure services. Hold on, let me just double back and I'll tell you what's under there. Camps and classes, flag football, that brings in a $30,000 revenue. Tennis is $20,500. Softball is $37,500.
Okay. I just didn't know. Now I understand. So the people who run the tennis program, you contract with them, and it's sort of like a sub agent.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Correct. You're welcome. Are there any other questions on the aquatics program? Next, we come to the leisure services cost center, and that cost center basically covers community events like the 4th of July. Discovery Camp falls into this cost center. Our Easter egg hunts. We have a new program called the Pumpkin Path, which we ran just this past year. A community yard sale. All of our nature center programs and activities, and smaller general programs that we might offer over the course of the year, small group programs. And so this particular fund is showing a just over a 5% decrease in the total budget. We've got a reduction in the seasonal salary line, and that is primarily attributed to our Discovery Camp program. And right now we have requiring fewer staff members. We are going into, like I said earlier, going into this summer as if we will have some restrictions still with the numbers that we'll be allowed to have in our programs. And so we've budgeted with that in mind. And finally, we have our creative activities, or our Stepping Stone preschool program. And this is our preschool right on Spring Street. It's for 3 and 4-year-olds, half-day program. And we are showing a 3.6% increase in that program. That's salary and benefits primarily. And we anticipate that that will run in FY 21-22, and we will be at full capacity for the Stepping Stone school program. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Terry. We're going to have to call Terry back to cover the senior center and program. But thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
We need to get Laurel.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Laurel Clark, the director of your unique and awesome libraries. There are 3 of them. We have 10 full-time employees and 19 part-time employees, and that makes up the majority of our budget. It's about 80%. We are asking for a very modest increase of 1.25%. That's roughly $16,500. We offer, our mission is to offer information, access to educational materials, electronic, physical. Obviously, we had to shift, like many of the other departments, and do things a little differently. So we're focusing on electronic stuff now. But we offer a lot. We have a lot of bang for your buck. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
See any hands yet? Any questions for Laurel? All right. Well, thank you, Laurel, and keep those libraries going. I know my kids have been used to burning out the books shelves.
We shifted a lot. We're still doing curbside, and we'll continue to do that. And you know, we're hoping to get, you know, once the weather changes, we'll get back to having some programming. Right now, we can't really do that indoors, obviously, but we're really looking forward to getting back to that.
It's been great for my kids. It's been like a lifeline. We've been.
And it is. We find that even with just people being able to come in for 15 minutes to browse, it's a connection, and they like to talk, and they just feel, and then they have something to do for the weekend or a snow day or just in general. So we're very proud to provide that service.
Very good. Well, have a good night.
You too. I'm staying here, so
All right.
take care, everybody. Thank you.
All right, we're on to insurance. Zach, you want to walk us through the non-departmentals?
Sure, very exciting stuff. So the first one is the municipal insurance. This covers the accounts for our public liability, comprehensive liability, auto liability, public officials, fire and building insurance for all town agencies and departments that are part of the general fund. This is the town itself is a member of the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust. We've been a member for decades. It's part of a cooperative pool that allows us to take advantage of our volume discounts on premiums. And basically the increase that we're proposing for fiscal 22 is based on claims history and working with them after they'll do an audit of our information every year, and then we'll come out. So we think it's a pretty conservative increase for municipal insurance. Moving to unemployment insurance. Historically, the town has had little turnover, so this has not become an issue. Fiscal 21, we've seen a spike in that, but we think that will go back down in fiscal 22, and we can basically get back to close to where we were over historically. It fluctuates from year to year, but we think staying in this $13,000 range is, again, conservative for us. Workers' compensation, we're actually proposing a slight decrease. Again, that's based on our payroll audits that are done by the Interlocal Trust. Any discounts we can get as being part of the cooperative is beneficial to us. And we've had some changes in demographics, I think, that have also led to this slight decrease. Again, it's hard to predict these things because of the risk factors such as higher cost of medical and reinsurance premiums. But again, we stay in close contact with the trust, and we'll try to not deviate too far. Moving next to our OPEB account is really an interesting place this year that you'll see we have reduced the proposed request down from what you have seen historically in the past. And the reason for that is our OPEB plan has reached a very healthy status of 100% funded. And what we're doing is working with our actuaries. I've actually started to work with our actuaries. I'm going to be bringing in the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust and our investment advisors to kind of help us reshape the plan itself and what we can do and strategies we can take now that we are at a healthy status. I mean, most municipalities across the state and the country are working to get to this place. We have gotten there with our funding, and now it's time to really take a look at it and say, what can we do to help the trust provide some relief to the general fund? But that is a long-term process. But we did talk to our actuaries this year, and I worked with them closely and asked them if we could actually do a decrease for our OPEB and healthcare contribution, and they did concur that we could lower it for this year, and then we can look long-term for fiscals years 23 and out to develop a long-term strategy, which I would bring back to you and kind of walk you through that as I get more information. But that's going to be a deeper dive and bringing in a lot of people to go through those and crunch those numbers. Any questions on, excuse me, I'm sorry. Oh, and then I'm sorry, the fund contingency, which again is, an account we've had for several years that we use for in case of an emergency. That ranges from anything from a, increase in snow removal if it was a bad winter and we didn't hit it, or if there were, for example, we used it last year for COVID-related expenditures that we could not have predicted. So some of the COVID-related expenditures went to that account. We did increase it from what the proposed last year. If the council members who were there last year remember, there was a request for the $65,000, and we reduced it to the, it was $64,000. We reduced it to the $54,000 to provide funding for two additional outside agencies that had made requests and the council had granted them at the last minute. I have brought that back up to the proposed is matching what we were kind of historically. Any questions or comments about insurance and OPEB?
So I would just comment here that the OPEB story is one of the strongest points in South Kingstown's fiscal status. It is evidence of a very healthy fiscal structure. The fact that we are 100% funded, we are the envy of communities around the state and around the country. This is a big deal. This has been managed well over the years. Zach came in a couple of years ago and it's been managed well over the last couple of years. Our investment result has been very good in the last couple of years, surprisingly good in the last year. And it's put us in a very healthy place and allows us to stop spending money for future expenses and start thinking about how we can do some things with those dollars now for taxpayers and for the program beneficiaries. So this is a big, big deal. Zach deserves a lot of credit for keeping us on a good path, and the prior administration deserves a lot of credit for starting us on that path.
I will echo that there was a lot of work to get there over the years, to stand this up, move it forward. You know, the accounting standards have changed significantly. It has brought focus onto this area. I mean, I will tell you that when we sit with the bond rating agencies, probably the second or third question they will ask consistently is, what is your pension liability and what is your OPEB liability? And we can say to both of them that we are in very healthy positions on both. We have more control over the OPEB because it's our plan. Because we're part of the state system, we're restricted to what we can do, but the state has very strict practices on the municipal plan. So we are on a path to get to 100% funded over a period of time. All of our municipal plans are in a healthy status. I believe the police might be the only one that is under 80% funded, but they are at about 75 or 76 the last time I looked at their numbers. EMS is about 100% funded for pension purposes, and the town, which includes town employees and school non-certified employees, I believe is over 80%. It might be around 84%. I'd have to double check that for you. So rating agencies, they take that very seriously because it is a long-term liability. That is it's an expensive part of any municipal or state government. So we are in a very unique position, and I want to find a way to, and I will come back with a strategy for you that will try to keep you in that position and going not just for the short term, but for the long term, 20, 30 years out.
So if you want to think about the three things that are sort of pillars of our enviable fiscal status, this is one of those three. And the other two are our undesignated fund, which is at the top end of our policy. We're above the 17% as we speak here tonight. And we'll be dealing with that because we can during the next fiscal year. And the other is our capital reserve program. Our capital reserve program, our undesignated fund management policy, and our OPEB management policies are just, they're just industry standard high. I mean, they're the best you can do, at least in New England. There are different rules in New England than the rest of the country, but we really are at the top of the game here on these. All right, we're going to meet with the outside agencies tomorrow night. So we're going to move through, and I think the next one up is going to be Terry, if Terry's still in the room. Susan? Yes, the Peacedale Office Building Fund.
Hello again. Peacedale Office Building. This fund is self-sufficient. There's no tax support involved in the Peacedale office building budget. The Peacedale office building is the building located directly across from the Peacedale Library, just to give everybody a frame of reference. It is supported by rental income and recreation program revenue. Right now we're at, we have 7 of our 9 rental vacancies filled. I mean, we have 2 vacancies, 7 of the units are occupied. We're due for 1 lease renewal in 2021-22. We generally do lease terms of 5 years. That's what we like to try to shoot for. And right now we're projecting a decrease in the operating budget of about 12%. Basically, that's due to, we try to adjust our operational expenditures based on what we see is coming in. The unassigned fund balance for Peacedale office building is pretty healthy. What we see in the long term for this building is a need for attention to capital improvements to make sure we can maintain it. We're looking forward to doing that in cooperation with Mark Russo and his facilities division, so that we can really keep this building in good shape. It's a nice combination of local businesses and offices combined with the Museum of, I'm going to get it wrong, Peacedale Museum, which is on the 3rd floor. And also our basement level is a pottery studio where we run our pottery program. And the 3rd level is a fitness studio which we rent out, and we also use it for recreation programs. Any questions?
Okay, Terry, you're up next as well.
What am I doing?
I don't know what you're doing next, though. Let's find out. Senior services, of course.
So I will call your attention. Senior services does have some significant changes that I'd like to point out. Well, I'll just go through it generally. We have historically had 4 cost centers within senior services, being transportation, nutrition, adult day, and the senior center program. The FY 21-22 budget is proposing a significant decrease. That is due to the closure of the adult day services, which occurred in June of 2020. It was decided at that time, due to the implications of COVID-19 and reopening, it was just not financially sustainable to try to work within the confines of the COVID regulations for that particular program. And just for a little bit of background, the adult day services program was established in 1989, back in the basement of, I believe it was the church on Main Street. It has been a wonderful community service for 30 years. We recognize that. The town council recognized that when we did have to close it, and there was a commitment made to be able to reopen the program and reestablish it. We're currently in negotiations with a third party to come in and essentially partner with the town. We would be an in-kind partner, being able to provide the actual infrastructure, the building at 283 Post Road, for a provider to come in and operate the adult day service program again. That's the major change within the senior services budget. And you'll see that it's down by $330,000. Essentially, that was the operating budget for the adult day services program. But we are committed to being partners with whoever will be coming in to reopen that building. And we're very confident that that will happen within the next 6 months. But overall, I would say that, just to go over the budget cost centers, transportation is up by 30%. That has to do with some reallocation of personnel numbers. We tried to take a hard look at where our manpower kind of was dedicated to within the actually three divisions. And so we restructured a little bit and applied some of the personnel costs for programming and senior center operations into transportation, because there's a significant amount of time dedicated to taking reservations for transportation and dealing with seniors to get them set up in order to ride the van. So that's what that particular increase reflects. And again, the transportation program allows for seniors to be transported to and from the senior center at no cost. There is a charge for transportation to the supermarket or CVS or somewhere in town. There is a nominal fee for 21-22. That will be a $1 fee, a charge for the transport to places like that. I should back up and say that the senior center, while it is not open to the public, the building, and we are not transporting people at this time, they have been a critical component in addressing COVID-19 particular issues with the pandemic. One being right from the get-go, distribution of senior meals. Since March of 2020, 37,000 meals have come through the senior center and been dispersed through and delivered to South Kingstown seniors. And then Narragansett is also a partner in that program. And Narragansett also has resources. They come and pick up their meals and to deliver to their Narragansett residents. So that has not stopped. The nutrition program continues to operate. It's just not in the dining room. It's basically, we're bringing meals to those in the community who need it, regardless of income. It's been a fabulous operation for the entire year, and it will continue until we're able to reestablish in-person meals. And with transportation, the vans become critical because it's our driver and our kitchen staff who have been doing the deliveries for those who can't come and drive through and pick up. So I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Sue DeMasi and her staff for the incredible work that they've done all year long. And most recently, within the past 5 weeks, in addition to the meal distribution, scheduling and outreach to seniors 75 years and older in order to get them scheduled for COVID-19 vaccinations. And they've scheduled over, I think it's over 700 or 800 appointments at the South Road School site. And that is very meaningful and gratifying work. I think they would tell you that. And they've just done an outstanding job working directly with Craig Stanley, making that happen. And they're continuing to do that. So I just felt compelled to make sure that I recognize the senior services staff for a great job, and other town staff as well who have contributed to that. So back to the budget. I apologize for that version.
We can't say enough about the work that's been done over there. The work has been phenomenal, absolutely unbelievable. Working Saturdays, working late, working early, just doing everything they can to make sure that every senior over the age of 75 receives the vaccine. And we're beginning to see some evidence that we've achieved that goal.
Close. So if we go back to the budget, you'll see about a 6% increase in our senior nutrition program. And again, right now that's kind of a delivery only program, but we anticipate again with the senior program and that being the most vulnerable population, a kind of slow and gradual resumption of operations and services. So we don't anticipate we're gonna flip the switch and have everybody back in the senior center on July 1. It's gonna take some time, but we're optimistic that folks will be coming back in 21-22. The adult day services program, you will see a $7,000, about a $7,500 expense with the adult day program. We are simply carrying over, and as we will be the landlord, we will be required to carry insurance on the property. And so that's what that will cover. And then our senior center program is showing just a little dip in the operations. That's partially due to some of the personnel being transferred to the transportation cost center. So you'll see our overall budget is down by 33%, attributed primarily to the not complete elimination, but the elimination of the adult daycare operational budget. I would just mention that we also, we partner with the town of Narragansett, and Narragansett does contribute to our nutrition program and our senior center operation program, and in the past, the adult day program. We base their, what we propose for them to contribute based on actual numbers of meals served, and that's a percentage of our overall number, as well as with the senior center operation. We calculate a certain contribution for the town of Narragansett, and those details are provided to the town of Narragansett in advance so that they can prepare their budgets accordingly as well. So they do contribute to our overall budget. North Kingstown was previously also a contributor, but that had to do with the adult day program. So they're not involved in the senior center operation or contribution there. It was the specifically the adult day program. Are there any questions for the senior budget?
All right, I'm going to move on to the Guild.
Okay, Guild. So the Guild is also a self-sufficient fund, and it is another area where we provide several different cost centers that are related to specific programs. The Guild is supported through trust fund revenue and program revenue. And our budget this year does show a decrease. And again, it's mostly about right sizing and being conservative in how we project how quickly we're going to get back up to speed with some of our programs. So there's the first cost center is our administration and maintenance, and that's basically the operation of the building itself and staffing of it. So really managing the Guild. Some of our personnel that is stationed at the Guild is split among our general fund personnel expenses and the Guild, so that there's a shared cost in some of the personnel. We are at about a 2.7% increase in that particular cost center. Again, that's basically personnel and benefit increases. We have a front desk operation, which is a full-time person and also part-timers that basically handle the customer service at the front desk at the Guild. There is an increase here. We are proposing an additional part-time staff member. We had been down by one staff member. We want to put that back in the budget so that we can handle our evening shifts at the Guild and provide the necessary level of customer service that we feel would be necessary once we're back up and running. Our youth programming, we show a decrease of about 4.8%. And the programs that are included in the youth programs with the Guild include our vacation camps that happen at the Guild. We just held one in February, very well attended. It was at capacity, COVID capacity. And we have one in April coming up that we are anticipating will be filled. So we're looking forward to that. We have other programs that we run throughout the year geared towards toddler through teens that occur at the Guild. But overall, we're showing a little bit of a decrease just because we're not ready to say we're going to be, full bore on all of our programming based on what we know about COVID. Music. We have the Knapp School of Music, which has been in existence for decades. Again, this is a very popular program. We generally budget over $100,000 for this program, but these are one-on-one lessons. They're side by side with an instructor, so we anticipate a slow uptick. We have some of our music instructors actually teaching remotely via Zoom, and we do have some back in person. So again, we're just being cautious on this budget also. We have an adult leisure category cost center. This is other classes that happen at the Guild, like dog obedience class and knitting and those types of programs. We're looking at a 7.7% decrease in that particular cost center. Our arts program, we're looking, that's our pottery program. We have painting, we have other art classes that take place as well. So we're looking at also a decrease in the arts program. But overall, we're up, and I'm sorry, one more big one. This is the significant one, is our trip program. Because we didn't run a trip program this year, we had budgeted for it, but because of COVID-19 and buses certainly not being something people want to hop on and head to New York with 40 other people, we're not budgeting for a trip program for 21-22. It doesn't mean that we cannot mid-year decide that we want to do something. That's a self-sustaining program, so whatever comes in goes out. There's not a cost to us. It's simply whether or not we feel like we're prepared to start promoting travel, bus travel. And at this point, we don't really think it's a slam dunk. So we're not putting it in the budget. And so you'll see our program revenue will be about $220,000. And then the remaining revenue for the Guild operation is trust fund revenue, where you can see the revenue statement there. And typically, we don't rely as heavily on the trust fund revenue because we have a higher level of programs to offer and program participation. This is conservative. You'll notice we have also reduced what we're seeking for trust fund revenue. Last year was this year, I should say, higher than normally budgeted trust fund revenue. We had some retirements, we had some payouts, so that we needed to increase that a bit. We're downsizing a little bit for this year, and I think we'll build back up, and by 22-23 be back where we were before COVID.
All right.
Any questions?
All right, another enterprise fund, the recreation, community recreation center.
So I think we were fortunate in some ways that we had 4 different elections and or referendums at the rec center this year. It did give some good exposure to community members who may not have stepped foot in the building before. So in that regard, it was positive. We do anticipate a little bit of an increase in our rec center budget, 2.7%, with the increase in the general fund transfer, 3.4% overall. The rec center revenue besides the general fund transfer comes from our athletic programming and from rentals. And so what you can see on the revenue side is that we are really looking at, hold on, let me get my, very little movement on the rental income, just a 0.3%. We do anticipate that we will see that activity tick up. We have seen that already. We have been fortunate to be able to run programs within the guidelines, but we were probably one of 2 communities in the state that were able to have some kind of rec basketball program this year. And that's been hugely successful. People have been grateful to be able to have something to do with their kids on a Saturday morning through the winter. And we've seen an uptick in our rentals recently with folks, because we still have regulations. We are not having drop-in programs where people can come when they want. We're very stringent in terms of how we're operating the rental program. But overall, we're looking at a little bit of an increase for 21-22 and a little bit of an increase for the athletic program for 21-22 as well. We'll be running the same types of programs, the youth basketball program, the adult basketball, pickleball, volleyball, all of those types of programs that take place within the rec center fall within this revenue category. And then the remainder will come from the general fund transfer request of this council. So we appreciate your consideration on this. Any questions?
That's good, Terry. Thank you. I know it's been a tough year, but I think all that being said, you did a remarkable job, maintaining the level of programs that you were able to. Great.
Thank you.
All right. Debt service fund, we can either do this as part of our overview on Monday night, or we can do this now. What's the council's preference?
Is this the last thing on?
I think it is. The only thing beyond that we've got are the utility enterprise funds. If anybody has any specific questions on that, I'd be happy to, take a whack at it, but we'd also be happy to go back to John and make sure that we get his full institutionally knowledgeable answer to any questions on the utility funds as well. Those, as you know, are outside of tax dollars. They're not taxpayer funded, they're user fee funded programs. But beyond that, yes, this is the last one.
I mean, I'm okay if we want to. I probably won't take too long to get through the debt service fund, so just knock it out.
All right. Zach, you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I think it'll be fairly straightforward. The debt service fund is the fund where we actually, account for their principal and interest payments for all issuances of debt, bonds, notes, or any other obligations of the town. Moving quickly to the expenditure side, it's broken down into two categories of debt. We have education debt service and town debt service. The increase for the education side is the result of the $4 million bond sale that we had, or $3.8 million bond sale that we had this last May. So this is now the first, we're in the first full year of debt service for them, which is the increase there, which you'll see is going up, from, I think the actual in 2020 was $1,035,000 to 1.39. The town debt service right now is incorporating the $6.5 million bonds that were approved. So depending on when we go out to sale for those, will determine. So I have factored in just a 1 year, which would increase at about 325,000, which would be, $6.5 million at around 3.25 over 20 years if we did it at a level principal. So that's why you see the principal side go up and the interest. That is all depending on market conditions and depending if we want to change I took the most conservative approach for budget purposes, but that's all, can be subject to change. We'll bring in, when we get close to do that, obviously our fiscal advisor will come in and work with us to find the best program that will work for the town. Revenues that come into the debt service plan, we have the biggest one would be the general fund transfer, and we have elected to level fund the transfer in 22 to what was in 2021, which was the 1.9 million. And to balance the fund, it looks like, sorry, we have a small typo there. The actual income over the expenditures should be 0. It won't be $232. would be, we are moving forward designated fund balance to balance the account. By level funding, our expectation was to, stick within the goal of trying to provide tax relief from the general fund to taxpayers. So we do have a surplus account, surplus in that fund. So we are moving 226,000 from the designated fund balance to help balance that and alleviate having to bring in more money from the general fund. Any questions on debt? And the 85 million is not incorporated into that because depending on the timing of when the referendum would be either late fiscal 2022 or in fiscal 2023. So we anticipate you would see that debt service show up in the 23 budget if the referendum is successful.
Thanks, Zach. Councilwoman Bergner.
Yeah, so sorry, Zach. So
Sure.
this page that we're looking at, that 226,341, that's money that you took out of the undesignated fund and you're using it in the.
That is money from the designated fund balance of the debt service fund itself.
Oh, okay.
Yes, not from the general fund. It is within, if we wanted, I could not take money from the general fund without your authorization. Well, I'd have to ask the manager to make a recommendation to move money from any additional money from the general fund to any outside fund would have to go to the council approval. Within this, we are using the reserve balance of the debt service fund to help offset having to bring in additional funds from the general fund. Sorry, there's a lot of funds there.
And this is also a proposal. I mean, this is, council guidance here is also, we're subject to council guidance everywhere in the budget. A proposal is just that. It's not the final budget. This is just the recommendations and requests that we're making.
So there's, is it the previous page? I've only had the budget for 36 hours and honestly,
Yep.
It's very hard. So the debt fund is where that you're taking that from?
So there's a reserve within the debt fund that hasn't been identified. They were monies that we put aside in the debt fund, not tied to a particular bond or debt instrument. So we have within the debt fund, funds that are in reserve. They're funds that we've put aside knowing that we're going to have future debt that we can apply those funds to.
Mm-hmm.
Funds are coming from the reserve within the debt fund.
Okay, so my question is, how much money is in the reserve debt from that you took 200? What's left over?
Yeah, sure. Give me one moment to find that.
Take your time.
I'm going to get the number from our.
Yeah, I don't want to blurt out a number because I don't want
No, please don't.
Well, this was confused because I thought if you scroll up to that other page, 288, I guess. I was confused on what I thought I saw. That's debt service. Okay. I'm just, when you propose to take money out of something, is there 500,000 in there? Is there $1 million in there?
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah, it's a good question.
So I just was curious, and I was just curious about, I guess, the undesignated fund balance. It seems very high.
Yes. So the undesignated fund balance total, we will talk about Monday night as part of our general description. But you're right, that is now at a very healthy level. Our policy in South Kingstown is to have a undesignated fund balance of between 10 and 17%. And our 20 result is going to be more than that. We're going to be over the 17%. We're going to be slightly over 18%. It is a healthy undesignated fund balance. And what you do when you have that is you look for a mechanism to bring you within your parameters, to bring you down from above the 17 to get to the 17, or
below that at any rate. We will be coming in with a recommendation. We have come in with a recommendation to expend $880,000 from that undesignated fund balance in next year's budget. Zach can tell us what that gets us down to in the percentage. I don't recall.
So just to circle back to the debt service fund reserve, excuse me, at the end of fiscal year 2020 was 884,000. So we'd be reducing that. 262 would come from that number.
226, yeah.
226, I'm sorry. Yes. I don't want to make it higher than it is.
Right, okay, so that's fine. I'm just trying to understand. So that money is.
So within the debt, it's its own contained fund.
Right.
Over the years, you have made contributions from the general fund. Some of it is, last year we made an additional contribution trying to slowly build up that fund so that if debt is taken on in the future, there are, we have several avenues to help with property tax relief and not try to put it all on the taxpayer in the general fund. So we're trying to take a step approach in there as opposed to having big tax swings in the out years if there is a successful project. Right. So if not, we have a debt service fund. There will always be projects that have, and this is where all debt funded projects go through.
Mm-hmm.
So to put that in terms of the anticipated school facilities project, these monies were in part put there. That reserve was built up to the 884 in anticipation of there being a large facilities project. Taking 226 this year would put us at 658, which is funding the money that is available for stepping up on the debt associated with the facilities project. An $85 million project is going to cost us between $2.5 and $2.7 million in debt service on an annual basis. That 658 will help us ease into it in the first and perhaps the second year, so that we're not seeing all 2,500,000, 2,700,000 being borne by taxpayers. There's this piece that's going to be a major part of the discussion we're going to have on Monday, and it's a big part of the sort of macro fiscal issues that we're going to have to deal with over the next few years. But this is one of the tools that we've set aside to make sure that we're not going to run into a crisis. Mm-hmm. Likelihood of our hitting a crisis is greatly reduced when we have reserve funds available to offset anticipated but large expenses. Here we have 658. We have our undesignated fund balance, which will be at the 17%. That's a significant number. What is the total number in the undesignated fund balance right now, Zach?
At the end of June 30th, 2020, our audited financial statements, it was 16.1. It's projected to go up slightly in 2021. It puts us in a unique position, just slightly outside of the range. And that's because, again, we slowed down expenditures. We didn't add anything to any additional capital funds at the end of the year, knowing that, if there is a successful project, we have to go out to the rating agencies, and I'd rather be on the high side of an unassigned fund balance so that if we need to provide relief, that number, it can be used and it's there and it's available, and if anything we take out of it does not put us in a, doesn't put us in a difficult position going forward.
We have $658,000 that will be available from the debt fund to sort of offset the pain in the first couple years. We've got $16.1 million in our undesignated fund. However, we don't want to come down below 10% for sure. And it's really good practice for us to stay in the higher range. Now, we don't have to be at 17%, but when you start getting down below 15, 14%, you're getting into territory where you're really going to want to question how we're managing that fund. So we can't take 16.1 and sort of offset $2.7 million worth of annual debt service for the number of years that it would take to burn those undesignated funds. We need to keep a balance in order to maintain our credit rating and in order to be prepared in case something happens. So there's some of that money that will be available.
But we still need to see, and we're getting into Monday night's conversation, we still need to see real operational savings in order to make sure that we can manage the additional capital costs associated with the large projects.
So my parallel question is, does the school have a designated fund balance fund? Or they do?
Yes, they do.
Okay. So they're also, because there's a slide in here. I don't know what slide I had written it down, a piece of paper, maybe. I don't know. I can't find it now, but it was with the schools, and it was related to their fund balance and their something else. I'll have to look and come back to it, but I'm just confused. So they have a debt service fund. They have an undesignated fund.
They do not have a debt service fund. They do not do debt service. We do debt service for the schools. They don't have a debt service fund. They have an undesignated fund balance. When they have
Of 1.8 or something like that?
I think that's correct, but Zach, you may have that number.
I don't have the number, but it's in that range.
Yeah. So what that is at the end of each school year, if there is funds that are surplus, if they have money left over after the end of the year, those funds go into their undesignated fund balance, and those stay with the school in Rhode Island.
I guess I just of the mindset that a lot of families in town have made a lot of sacrifices, and businesses have made a lot of sacrifices to move through this year, and that a lot of people don't have the luxury of the reserve fund. And so I'm very much aware that, you know, we still don't have a stimulus package. We don't have any sort of knowing what's coming, and people have been on the verge. When you hear that, you know, 1 in 6 homes worry about their food, or people are worried about evictions, and we're sitting on just a lot of money that was their money at some point. So when people are hurting, I feel like we have a bank account that was really originally their bank account. And so I don't want to be in the position of growing our pile, and they're all wondering how to get their mortgage paid, their kids' shoes, whatever it is. So I'm just very aware of that.
I think those are all, you know, legitimate points. I will point out that there was no property tax increase last year because we wanted to make sure that we weren't causing injury to private taxpayers. The other thing that I will point out is that these reserves are really meant to avoid unpredictable impact on taxpayers. The main tool for preventing sort of shocks to the taxpayer in Rhode Island, there's two. The two major provisions in law that are designed to protect the taxpayers from a shock are the revaluations of property every 3 years. That's supposed to make sure that we're moving the values up as they actually grow in real time, rather than waiting 10 years and hitting people with one big increase in their valuation. And the other big legal restriction here is the 4% cap on the tax levy increase. Rhode Island law says we cannot increase the total tax levy by more than 4% in any given year. Those two legal provisions are designed to make sure that taxpayers don't get whacked unexpectedly. Our reserve funds go beyond the law to make sure that we can manage our accounts, manage our expenditures over time, even if we have a big one that has to be done, like a Matunic seawall or like a school facilities project, without even going to the 4%, without even, you know, coming up against some sort of strange valuation problem. We're providing another layer of protection to make sure that taxpayers don't encounter an unexpectedly high increase in their taxes. That's what these reserve funds are designed to do. They're there not because it's fun to manage a reserve fund. They're there because we need to do something to make sure that we smooth increases when we know we are going to have increases. And we're always going to have increases. There's always going to be something that comes down the line. Maybe it's not every year, maybe it's not every 5 years, but you are going to need to take care of facilities. You are going to need to respond to natural disasters. So these reserves aren't there simply because it's an accounting exercise that we want to engage in. They're there because they're protection for the taxpayer.
I do understand that. I just need to say that when you read in the national news that 1 in 6 families is worried about food, maybe South Kingstown's a little different, but maybe it's 1 in 8. It's still people worried about paying their bills, and it's hard because the government can always just say, we just need a little bit more, and so that family is like, you're taking my X or Y. And you can look at the macro, but you also have to think about the micro. Every family is worried about something. And this year, I think more than ever,
Yep.
we've had people have to go to their savings and been unemployed and have reduced hours. And I'm just very sensitive to the changes. And when the fund balance is so healthy and when, all of these things are in place, it's at the expense of other people's giving that to us.
We do appreciate that, and that's why we're recommending that we bring it back down, that we spend the monies. I mean, to be honest with you, the existence of these fund balances is how we had a 0% property tax increase last year, and it's how we get to a well below inflationary tax increase this year. We're 0.5% lower than inflation when inflation was only 1.5%. We are coming in conservative because we can, because those funds are there. If those undesignated funds, if those reserve funds were not there, if the reserve funds for the capital account were not there, you would not be able to continue with your capital program, and things would start falling apart. We'd start riding around in 10-year-old pieces of equipment that are not safe for the public. Now, we are doing the right thing by maintaining those undesignated fund balances, by dealing with our capital accounts the way we deal with them, and by dealing with OPEB and our future commitments so that future generations don't get an unexpected expense down the line. We actually are doing the right things. I'm very sensitive to the fact that these are all public monies and that they were all once private monies. We have an obligation to the people who are paying the taxes, but it is honestly the best thing we can do to make sure that they don't meet unexpected increases, and that we're not forcing people to make bad, unconscionable choices about whether they can stay or have to leave South Kingstown because of tax increases. This scheme, this mechanism, this device, having reserves so that you can protect yourself when events occur or when high expenses come your way, really is a good strategy. It's the right strategy. It's the way to protect people from runaway spending. Now, that having been said, if we don't make sure that we're doing the right thing on an annual basis, that sort of planning, those buffers, those reserves don't last very long. We need to make sure that we're not using buffers as an excuse to just spend. We have to have those buffers in place because they perform an important function in the fiscal system, not just because they're neat. It's not, this is not just an accounting exercise. It really is a way to design a program that is sustainable even through unexpected or expected but large expenses.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if there are any questions on the enterprise accounts, I'm happy to answer them. And if there are really issues deep into the operations, John will be able to get back to us when he's back in the office. All right.
All right. Thank you very much. This is a nice marathon of our department budget. Any closing comments? I appreciate that it's now past 10 o'clock, so we're all set then. I'd say I'll see you all tomorrow night at 6:30, and we'll talk about the outside agency. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, folks. Good night.